Chapter 2779. Senior Sister Gao, why are you here? Yang Kai was shocked. While speaking, he quietly looked outside to make sure that no one had seen him, before closing the door of the Spirit Sword Hall. Gao Shueting frowned and said, "Why are you so sneaky? What are you planning?" Yang Kai glared at her and said, "What could I be planning? It's you who dared to run around after being grounded by Brother Chiu for 3 months. If Brother Chiu knew about this, he would definitely deduct your elder contribution points until you die." Gao Shueting sneered. "That old bastard just put me in confinement. But he didn't say that I was going to be locked up in Purple Bamboo Peak. I can go wherever I want in this divine palace." "That works?" Yang Kai was shocked. Most importantly, he was shocked by the way Gao Shueting addressed him as an old fart. Yang Kai felt that it was necessary for him to get to know Gao Shueting again. Gao Shueting sneered. "Sooner or later, I will take his position as an elder of the disciplinary hall. I will let him taste what it feels like to have his elder contribution points deducted and grounded." "How is it?" Yang Kai looked at the woman with a smile. He didn't know if the woman's decision to let Gao Shueting join Azure Sun Temple and said with a hollow laugh was the right one. "This battleship, as the saying goes, a crooked stick will have a crooked shadow." Smiled and he originally thought that Gao Shueting was a noble and holy woman. Before? But now the woman glared at him brought up by before putting on a stubborn posture. Her childhood memories were destroyed, and her body and mind were not healthy. Although I have some small flaws in my character. Could such a person be? Small flaws? His previous impression of her was just a facade. Forehead bulged. After really understanding her deeply, but I also have my advantages. His worldview was completely destroyed. My biggest advantage is that I accept defeat. By the way, Senior Sister Gao, the woman looked at Yang Kai and said, "Since Yang Kai didn't want to talk about usurping power with her, there's no need to get married." So he quickly changed the topic. Yang Kai raised his hand and refused. Gao Shueting nodded solemnly. Grandmaster Immediately, refining. She flipped her palm. This young master came here mainly to invite you to the High Heaven Palace. Yang Kai took it suspiciously and swept it with his divine sense. He won't take offense. He raised his eyebrows and said, "So many emperor-grade spirit herbs." The woman covered her mouth and giggled. "Is this the benefit of becoming an elder of the temple?" The temple is really thoughtful, became serious, but I have a lot of spirit herbs. Let's be clear. You don't need these. It was you who didn't want me to fulfill the agreement. Looked at him and said lightly, "My reputation cannot be tarnished. This is not your benefit. Army commander can testify. Sword Peak is your benefit." Yang Kai smiled and added, "If you want, you can also ask Junior is willing to return to the High Heaven Palace for some conscript disciples." When the woman heard this, her expression and help you manage the flowers and plants. She tilted her head. This is also a kind of welfare at the army at the south gate. As for these spiritual herbs, after careful consideration, she said, "I want you to refine a spiritual pill. No matter how many benefits your towering palace has, refined into pills, I wouldn't have considered it. Darkened. But since Army Commander has already joined, let's join in the fun. Doesn't that mean I'll have to refine an emperor pill? I won't let Grandmaster Ho down." "That's right." Yang Kai smiled and nodded. "Pill. Don't be in such a hurry." Nodded. The woman raised her hand doesn't have an alchemist emperor of our own. "I have a condition, but we have accumulated a lot of emperor-grade spirit herbs." The woman turned around. "It's rare for you to join us to the back of the rock." So naturally, she lifted her leg and pressed her floral dress to her waist. Yang Kai was speechless. She stepped on the rock with one chuckled and said, leaving half of her body exposed. Capable people are always busy, but she didn't care. Junior brother, it was unknown when a dice cup appeared in his hand. Treasure pill. He shook it in a daze for a while. Although it has been many years and others may not remember it. After a moment, he covered the rock. "I remember it clearly. Let's make a bet." "I've inquired about it. The stake is this battle to refine the extraordinary treasure pill." Yang Kai asked that you were almost at the level of an alchemist emperor. The woman nodded. After a few years, speechless. You should have heard from the soldiers at the south gate that Master Ho was a gambling addict to you. But he had never had the chance to learn from him. Do you want us deity hall elders to chew on something like waste before he left? By the way, origin the day before yesterday, Yang Yen, you seem to have refined a furnace of emperor pills. That was why she wanted to use Yang Kai as a stake. TSK. All right, how can it be Yang Kai naturally didn't have a problem? You're really amazing. It was just although there are a lot of herbs. If I win in your ability, what's your bet? Total of you have something to compensate after a year or so of snapped and shouted. The woman glared at him angrily before looking at Yang Kai at the south gate. She said, "Who said, since you've lost, I'll give you something as much as you want. No one forced you to do. You don't have to worry about her doing any grab something.
This girl
Young
is
Kai
extremely
returned serious when it comes to gambling without any warning. She turned around on her after taking a close look. She sighed.
He almost had
Young
a
Kai
nosebleed.
said
I was kind enough
casually.
to help you.
In any case,
but you didn't
winning or
appreciate
losing
it.
didn't
Still
matter.
warm.
Forget it.
Even if
Kai's
he lost,
face
I'm
darkened.
afraid
It
you
was
won't
just
be
a matter of
losing
losing
an
an
origin
The
career
woman said
for the rest
meaningfully.
of your
The
life.
Southgate
Who
Army
knows?
quietly
Young
took out
Kai
his
immediately
raised his hand
threw
as
it on
about
the
to
rock.
return to
Senior
his
sister
sister.
said,
Please
"Please
wait
wait."
to the other party when he turned
The
around.
woman
Looked at him with
He
stretched out his hand and shook
Junior,
out
careful
his
not to
corset.
lose
Do you have
everything.
anything
Spreading
else
it on
to
his
say?
palm
Don't
to
worry.
examine
Young
it.
Kai
He
clenched
clenched
his
his
fist
fist
and
and
coughed, planning to laugh at young
Fix
Kai.
your bets.
But when she
I would
saw
have
forgotten
forgotten
about the
this.
divine
A moment
ascension
later,
mirror, if you
the
had
woman
gentle
quietly
hand
sent
grasped
a
her
few
right
days
wrist
ago
and shook his
said that I
vigorous
wanted
army.
to enter the
Her eyes
divine
were filled with
ascension
mirror.
mirror.
Novice?
As
But
if
she
she
said
won't
that
keep
he
someone
thought
from
if I
using
tease him
it,
like
cut
this,
off my
and that I
hand.
shouldn't
You.
disturb it. The
May I
Southgate
ask
Army
when I
smiled
go in?
contemptuously. Do you have elder
What's wrong with
contribution
me?
points?
The woman
Gao
suddenly
Shueting
became
asked back.
unhappy.
No.
Young
Young
Kai,
Kai,
on
on
the other hand,
sneered,
saw a clue and looked up at the woman in amazement.
You don't even
asking in
have elder
surprise,
contribution
"Are
points.
you Master Monkey?"
Yet you still want
The
to
woman
enter
was
the
stunned
divine
for a
ascension
moment
before
mirror?
blinking.
Are you still drunk?
Yes. My
But
surname
last
is
time
Ho
you-
and my name is Yu.
last time,
So
you
you are
weren't a
Master
deity hall
Monkey.
elder.
Young
Now
Kai
that you're a
laughed
deity
and
hall
pointed to
elder,
the monkey head
you
symbol on the
naturally have
corset.
to follow the rules.
Ho you understood what he was
Otherwise,
talking about
anyone
and
can
smiled
enter as they
slightly.
please.
So you
And
were
the
talking about
experience
this.
in the divine ascension
Yes.
mirror won't
I am
be
the
so
elusive
precious
artifact
anymore.
refining
Senior
grandmaster,
sister,
Master Monkey.
how can you be like this?
It's you. Young Kai was
Kai's eyes
heartbroken.
widened.
Gao
But then he
Shueting
nodded
turned around
slightly
and said sincerely,
I should have known.
Junior brother,
On the
with
airship
great
of the
power
Southgate
comes great
Army,
responsibility.
Young Kai saw a
As
monkey
the
head
only
sculpture.
alchemist in the deity
At that
hall,
time,
you
he
have to
vaguely
shoulder
felt
the
that he had seen it
responsibility
before.
of refining
But
emperor
before he had
pills
time to
for the
think
deity
about it,
hall.
he was interrupted.
Young Kai
At
gritted
this
his
moment,
teeth,
seeing the
Senior
monkey head
sister,
symbol on the
you
corset
tricked
again,
me into becoming a
Young
deity
Kai
hall
suddenly
elder a few days
understood.
ago.
When he
Because
took
you had
Chinyu
this
to an
plan in
auction in
mind.
Maplewood
I'm
City
so
a few
young,
days ago,
yet you had
he
the
bought
heart
her
to lie to
flowing
me.
cloud butterfly
Gao
hairpin,
Shueting smiled,
which cost
when
a
you
lot of
refined the
high-rank
extraordinary
source
treasure
crystals.
pill back
The
then.
flowing cloud
I
butterfly
already had this
hairpin
plan in
had a
mind.
monkey head
I
symbol on
really
it.
was blind.
According to
Young
Chinyu
Kai
at that
lamented
time,
bitterly.
Master
As if a
Monkey
beautiful
was
dream
a
had
very
been shattered by
mysterious
someone.
artifact refining
When he woke up from
grandmaster,
his dream,
and no one
he
even
felt
knew
like he
whether
was
he
being
was a man
stabbed
or
by
a
a
woman.
knife.
His
However,
face was covered
the
in blood
artifacts
and
refined
tears
by
as he
Master
complained.
Monkey were all
Gao
high
Shueting
quality
said,
and could be
"Don't be
sold at a
angry.
high price.
If you don't want to
Master
perform
Monkey's
alchemy,
name was
there's
well known
another
in the
way."
southern region.
Young Kai
However,
gritted his teeth and
no
said,
one would have expected
"Senior
that
sister,
Master
please
Monkey's
enlighten
true
me.
identity
Didn't
was
you say
actually
last
a woman.
time that the
Moreover,
fifth disciple of
she
the
was a strange
extraordinary
woman
treasure
who liked
pill
to
great
drink,
emperors
gamble,
is the
and
chief
lose every
alchemist
time
of
she
your
gambled?
high heaven palace?
This was really a
Since
pleasant
you have
surprise.
subordinates,
Originally,
there's no need for you to
Hoyu's
do it
artifact
yourself.
refining skills were extremely
That's not
good.
a bad idea.
And with the
Young
addition
Kai
of
rubbed
Master
his chin
Monkey's
as he
name,
pondered.
High Heaven Palace
After a
had
while,
profited greatly
Young
this
Kai
time.
made his decision and asked, "What are the benefits?"
Now,
High
one
Heaven
Emperor
Palace
pill
had
is worth
gathered
10
Emperor
elder
alchemists,
contribution points.
Emperor Array
As
Masters,
long as you can take out
Emperor
200
Artifact
Emperor
Masters,
pills,
and
you
even
can
entered
dabbled
the
in the
divine
Dao
ascension
puppetry.
mirror once.
With 3 monster
joke.
kings in charge,
Young Kai
and a
stomped his
space
feet
array
and said,
connecting the territory,
10 elder
it was
contribution
easy
points
to
is
imagine
only
that no
worth
one could
10,000
stop the
high-rank
rise of
source
the
crystals.
sect.
Young
Which
Kai was in a
alchemist
good
would give
mood
out
and
something
waved
so
his hand.
cheap?
This
Damn
origin
it.
grade boat
Those
is a
bastards
gift to
ruined
you.
my plans
In any
and even
case,
told
for
you
me,
the exchange
it's
rate.
just a token of
Gao
remembrance.
Shueting's face darkened as she
Really?
muttered angrily.
Hoyu was overjoyed,
Young
and
Kai's
his
smile
face
spread
darkened.
across her
I
face
heard
as she
them.
bowed to young
Gao
Kai
Shueting
and
said
curled her
gently.
lips.
Then
This
what do you
mistress
want?
thanks Palace
One
Master
Emperor
for the
pill
gift.
for 100 elder
Young Kai was not
contribution
used to her
points.
suddenly
That's
acting
acceptable.
like this.
In
In
the blink of an
elder
eye,
contribution
Hoyu
points
returned
was
to her
equivalent
usual
to
self
100,000
and rushed to
high-rank
the origin
crystals.
grade boat. Generally
Opening
speaking,
her arms and hugging
it was
as
impossible
if
for
she
an
was holding a
alchemist to
peerless
refine
treasure.
just one pill
Young
per
Kai
batch.
removed the
They
soul
would usually
brand,
refine
and
at least
Hoyu
4 or
refined it
5
again
pills.
before putting it away
Alchemists outside
solemnly.
would need to
Palace
refine at least
Master,
500,000
if there is a chance
high-rank
in the
source
future,
crystals per
I
batch.
hope you can introduce
Young
me to the
Kai's
person
offer was
who
almost
refined
the
this
same
battle
price
boat as the temple's
Hoyu walked
alchemist
back
outside
and said with a solemn
20.
expression,
Gao Shueting
There will be a
bargained
chance.
without hesitation.
Yang Kai nodded slightly.
100. Do you
Yang
have
Kai
anything
did
else
not
to
back
pack?
down.
If
In
not,
your
let's go.
dreams.
Ho,
100
sneered.
it is.
I don't have
30 at
anything on
most.
me. Years
After
of
an
gambling
arduous
had
tug of
caused her
war
to
and
lose
haggling,
almost all of her
Yang
family's
Kai
property.
finally gave in and
Although
agreed
she was an emperor
that one emperor
artifact
pill was
master,
worth 50
she
elder
was actually very
contribution
poor.
points with no upper
Then let's
limit.
go.
Yang Kai
Come,
said,
please
Sign
don't
this soul
resist.
contract.
Saying
Gao
so,
Shueting flipped
Yang
her
Kai
hand,
wrapped them in his
and a
space
contract
principles
exuding
and
a strange
emperor chi.
fluctuation
And with
appeared.
a single thought,
It was the soul
they
contract
disappeared from the
produced by
cave.
the Serene
In
Soul
the blink
Palace.
of an eye,
This
the
thing was
three of them
common in the
reappeared
eastern
above the
territory,
island.
but
The
it was
South
priceless
Gate army
in
was
the
already
southern
prepared.
territory,
So they did
Yang
not
Kai
feel
had no
anything.
idea where she got
But
it
Hoyi
from.
was taken aback
Senior
and asked in
sister,
amazement,
aren't you looking
Spatial
down on me too much?
teleportation?
Junior
In an
brother,
instant,
although
they
I'm
had
young,
teleported
I
from the
won't go
cave
back
to this
on my
place.
word.
Breaking
Yang Kai
through
said
many
with an
barriers
insulted
to expression.
expression. Race.
Just
Hoyi
sign
did
it.
not feel
Gao
any
Shueting
trace of
urged.
Yang Kai
Yang
using
Kai
an
could not
artifact at all.
persuade her. and
there
could
was
only
only
brand
one
his sole
explanation
brand
for
on the
this.
sole contract.
Palace Master,
After signing the
are you
contract,
proficient in space
Gao
principles?
Shueting immediately
Our
beamed
Palace
with joy,
Master's divine
and carefully
technique
put
is
away
vast.
the sole contract.
You will be amazed in the
She
future.
patted Young Kai on the
The
shoulder and
Southgate
said,
Army grinned meaningfully.
"Junior brother,
Ho Yu's
Senior
heart
sister's
trembled as he
happiness in the
secretly
future
rejoiced
depends
that
on
he did
you."
not confront
Young
Kai
Kai was
head-on
flattered
before
by her
otherwise,
words,
but
his
after
strength would
thinking
not
for a
be
while,
enough. His
they
face
were both
suddenly
First
darkened,
Order
and he
Emperor
said
realm
bitterly,
masters.
"Senior
So how
sister,
terrifying would an
this is the
opponent
mission
proficient
given to
in
you by
space
Brother
principles
Chiu,
be,
right?
Not good.
How many elder
Ho Yu's pretty
contribution
face
points
suddenly
will you
turned
get
pale as
after
she urged
completing
Young
this
Kai.
mission? Let's go.
Same as
Or
you.
it will be too late."
Gao Shueting said
Young
without
Kai
raising
naturally
her
knew
head.
what she was
What
worried
do you
about
mean
and
by
said,
same as me? In the
"The old
future,
bachelor
my High
offered
Heaven
me one
Palace's
emperor
name
pill
will
for
shake
100
the world,
elder
and as the
contribution
chief
points,
artifact
and
refiner
asked
of
me
my
to
High
persuade
Heaven
you to
Palace,
refine pills
you
for
will
the
not be able
temple.
to hide it.
I'll give you 50
Instead
elder
of letting these
contribution
people
points,
come to High
and
Heaven
I'll
Palace
also get 50
and
elder
ruin my
contribution
High Heaven
points.
Palace's reputation
Naturally,
in the future.
I'll be the same as you.
It is better to pay
Ha, ha,
off
ha,
your
ha.
debts now.
Young Kai's smile suddenly
Palace
became
Master,
extremely sinister.
Ho Yu showed a moved
Senior
expression.
sister,
But
it
Young
must have been
Kai's
hard
next
for you
words
to tell me
shattered her
this
feelings
news so
completely.
casually.
All
Senior
the
sister,
repayment today
you're
will
such
be
a good
deducted
person.
from your future
I'll
monthly
remember you.
salary. Gao
Stinking
Shueting
woman,
said lightly.
you finally came
Young
out.
people,
Today,
there are always
you
many
won't be able
thorns
to
on the road
escape
to growth.
even if you have wings.
You'll learn from your mistakes
At the same
and
time,
slowly get better.
A stream of light
I
flew
really
over
have
from
to
the
thank
distance,
Senior Sister for
and
her
at the same
teachings.
time,
Young
a warning
Kai
whistle
squeezed
rang
out
out
these
in all
words from between
directions.
his teeth.
A moment later,
Feeling the blood in
a
his
figure
chest
appeared
roil,
from the
and
stream
a
of
sweet
light.
taste in his
It
throat.
was the middle-aged
Gao
man Young
Shueting
Kai,
smiled sweetly.
and the Southgate
Don't
Army
forget,
met when they
you
first
signed a sole
arrived on the
contract.
island 2 days
And
ago.
work hard.
This man's
When you
second
can
order
enter the divine
Emperor realm
ascension
aura
mirror,
was
will
extremely
depend on your
powerful
progress.
and unstoppable.
She turned
And
around
his
and
divine
lazily
sense
stretched
was locked
before
onto
opening
Ho Yu,
the door of the Spirit
making it
Sword
clear
Hall
that he would not
and
allow
looking
her
up
to
at the
escape.
sky.
He
The
pounced
weather's
forward
pretty good
and stretched out his
her
hand
delicate
to grab
body
Ho Yu,
flickered and
an
turned into a
astonishing
streak
pressure
of light,
descended like a
disappearing
mountain
without a
and
trace.
Ho Yu could not help but
Young
turn
Kai
pale.
clutched his chest
Even the
with a pained
Southgate Army's
expression.
figure swayed.
Half a day later, in a remote mountain valley behind
Both of them
Spirit
were
Sword
only
Peak,
First Order Emperor
Young Kai
Realm
held
Masters.
the Elder's jade disc
So
in his
facing
hand.
an angry Second
With a
Order
single
Emperor
thought,
Realm Master,
he mobilized
was
the power
naturally
of the
difficult.
Earth Vein and
In
Spirit
Chiefing
Sword
even
Peak's
found
barrier,
it difficult to breathe,
concealing a corner of this mountain valley.
With this action, even if a third-layer Emperor Realm Master came to this
Chapter
mountain valley,
2786,
they wouldn't be able to find
facing
any
the
clues.
middle-aged man's
Young
terrifying
Kai
attack,
sighed and took
Young
out
Kai
all
took a
kinds of
step
materials
forward.
from his
The
space
moment
ring,
his foot touched the
preparing
ground,
to arrange a
the
space
pressure
array
weighing
here.
down on Ho
He didn't
Yu
plan
and
to
the
hide
Southern
this,
Gate Army,
and even wanted
instantly
to
melted
tell when
like
Zishan
Zishan
about it,
under the scorching
because once
sun.
Azure Sun
Young Kai
Temple
gently
and
pointed
High
his
Heaven
finger
Palace
forward.
were connected.
It seemed
It would
simple,
greatly benefit
but it was
both
in
sects.
accordance with the
Hua
principles of
Qingxi
the
was
Great
currently
Tao.
collecting
The middle-aged
specialties
man's
from the northern
expression
territory,
changed as he hurriedly
and as
clenched
long
his
as they
fist
transported
and
them to
pushed
the
his
southern
Emperor
territory,
Qi to meet Young
they would
Kai's attack
definitely
head-on,
make a huge
with
profit.
a soft poochy sound.
Correspondingly,
The middle-aged
if
man's
Azure
aura
Sun Temple
instantly
collected
deflated like a
supplies from the
deflated
southern
balloon.
territory,
He couldn't
and
help but take
transported
a
them
few
to the
steps
northern
back
territory
before he could
they would
stabilize
definitely
himself.
make a huge profit.
On the other hand,
not to
Young
mention,
Kai was as
if
still
they
as a
used
mountain,
space array to
his aura
connect
was
the two
steady,
places,
and as the
the
sea
two
breeze
sects
blew,
would be able to
his
help
clothes
each other.
and black hair fluttered in the wind.
Chapter
Ho Yu was stunned as he
2780,
stared at Young Kai's
although the
back in a
arrangement of
daze.
the space array
For a
didn't have
moment,
any effect
Young
in a
Kai
short
looked like a
time.
celestial being.
In the long run,
Am I seeing
it had a
things?
huge impact
How can
on
a
both
First
sects.
Order Emperor Realm
This was
Master
also
be
one
so
of the
powerful?
reasons why Young Kai
Ho Yu
agreed
and the Southern
to
Gate
become
Army
an elder of
were
Azure
also
Sun
First
Temple.
Order Emperor Realm
As long as he
Masters.
became an elder,
But under the
he would
suppression
have
of this
his own
attack,
spirit peak.
they found it
and the
extremely
arrangement
difficult
would be
to
much
breathe.
simpler.
However,
But now that he had
this
been
High
cheated
Heaven
by Gao
Palace
Shueting,
Master was
Young
able
Kai
to
had
repel
to
them with a
reconsider.
single finger.
If Gao Shueting knew about
the
this,
middle-aged man was
then
also
Jiying
shocked.
might become the
In that
exclusive
instant,
alchemist
what
of
he
the
saw was
temple
not
in
a
the future.
finger, but a
And the
sharp
High
blade
Heaven
slashing
Palace would
towards
never
him.
be able to
The
touch
aura
him
of
again.
death enveloped
For the
his
time
body,
being, making
it was
it
better to
impossible
carry
for
out
him
this
to
matter
dodge or block.
quietly. When
Just
the time
when he
was
thought
right
he
in
would
the
be
future,
seriously injured,
it would not
even
be
if
too
he
late
didn't
to
die.
reveal everything.
The other party
Half a day
easily
later,
broke through
a
his
brand new
defenses
space array was
and
set
only
up,
forced him to
with
retreat.
the Elder's jade disc,
He didn't really
mobilizing
kill him,
the power of the
nor
spirit
did he even
sword
hurt
keep
him
to hide it.
All he did was
Unless
cause
Yang
his
Kai
aura
himself
to
was
become
willing.
slightly chaotic.
Even if when Zishan
Are
came
you in
here,
cahoots? He wouldn't
the
be able to
middle-aged
find
man
it.
recognized
Source
Yang Kai,
crystals were
and
inlaid
the
on the
Southern
space
Gate Army
array
at this moment,
and the power of the
he had
space
seen
law
these
was
too when they
activated.
first arrived
With
on
a
the
flash
island
of light,
2 days ago.
Yang Kai disappeared.
At that time,
The next
the other
moment,
person said that
Yang
they were
Kai's
here to
figure
collect a
appeared
debt,
on the space
and
array
he
of the
naively
High Heaven
believed
Palace.
him.
But now,
After a while,
it
on the
seemed that
main
these
peak
two
of the
were
High
not
Heaven
here
Palace,
to collect a debt,
Yao Dan Peak,
but were clearly
Yang Kai
accomplices
found
of
Ji
that
Yang.
hateful woman.
Seeing him again,
If they were ordinary
Ji was
First Order
extremely
Emperor
surprised.
realm masters,
Brother Yang,
you wouldn't
you're
need
back
to
so
worry
soon?
about them.
But he had just
Yang
taken
Kai
Yang
looked
Kai's
helpless,
finger
and
and
took the
witnessed
tea
Yang
offered
Kai's
by the
strength.
eldest disciple.
He was very
sat
wary
down,
of them.
and
if
said
they
with
really
waning
shed
interest,
all pretense of
"Don't mention
cordiality
it."
and fought,
Jiying
he might not
smiled,
be his opponent.
although he didn't know what
As his
Young Kai
mind
had
raced,
encountered.
the
He
middle-aged
could see
man
that he was in
regained
a
his
bad
composure
mood,
and shouted,
so he took out
"No
a
matter
jade
what,
bottle and threw
today,
it over.
you can
Young
either
Kai
return
caught
the
it
money
and asked
or pay with your
suspiciously,
life."
"What is this?"
As soon as he
Dragon
finished
blood
speaking,
pill.
figures
Jiying
rushed over
explained,
from all
"It's a
directions
spirit pill
and
refined
gathered
with the
around
dragon
the
blood
middle-aged
flower
man.
from last
Those
time
people
as
had
the
all
main
stayed on the
material.
island the
It should
entire
be
time.
useful for Brother
They were
Yang.
looking for Hoyu to collect their
this
debts.
is the dragon blood
There
pill.
were more than 20
Young
of them,
Kai was extremely
5 of which were
surprised.
from the Emperor
He
realm,
opened the jade bottle
other than the
and
middle-aged
poured out
man,
3 blood red
who was
pills.
a second-order
Each
Emperor
pill
realm
was about
master.
the size of a
The
fingernail
remaining 4 were
and
all
exuded a
first-order
bloody smell.
emperors. But it
With
was
so
not
many
pungent.
people standing by his
Instead,
side,
it
the
made
fear
people
in the
feel as if
middle-aged
their
man's
blood was
heart
boiling
lessened slightly.
And from the looks
He
of
alone
it,
was not a match
this
for that
dragon
young
blood
man.
pill, but with
Should
so
be a
many
low-grade
people,
emperor-level
how could he
spirit
not
pill?
be a match for him?
This is my first
fierce
time
tiger
refining
does
this
not
kind of
fight
spirit
against a
pill.
pack of wolves.
It was inevitable
and
that I was a
2
little
cannot
rusty
fight against 4
in the
hands.
end. I only
No matter
managed
how
to
strong
form
the
3
other
pills.
party is,
I
he
hope
can't
Brother
beat
Yang
one
doesn't
person.
blame me.
As soon as
Jiying
these
said
people
somewhat
appeared,
guiltily.
they all looked
Young
at
Kai
Hoyu
laughed.
with hatred and anger.
Brother Ji,
It
you're
was
too
as
modest.
if they had some sort
3
of
is already a very
irreconcilable
good
enmity
result.
with her.
Jiying
However,
was a
they
pill
didn't
emperor.
speak casually.
Furthermore,
It was obvious
the
that they were
direct
following the
disciple of the
lead of
great
the middle-aged
middle-aged man.
wondrous pills.
Friend,
However,
this woman owes
he was
us a
able
lot
to
of
refine
source
3
crystals.
pills on his first
If you
try.
insist on
This was
sheltering
enough
her,
to show his
don't blame
profound
us for not
foundation
giving
in
you
alchemy.
face.
If it was
The
any other
middle-aged
pill
man looked at
refiner,
Young Kai
they definitely
vigilantly.
wouldn't have done as well as Jiying. Jiying waved his
everyone
hand
here?
and smiled bitterly.
Young Kai smiled
Brother Yang,
slightly
you flatter me,
and swept his
in
gaze
front
across
of Young
the crowd,
Kai, before
who had
landing on the
defeated him
middle-aged
fair
man
and
again.
square with his
He
alchemy
said calmly,
skills.
"Debts
Jiying
must be
really
repaid.
couldn't be arrogant.
What she owes you."
After a
"I
pause,
will pay it
Jiying
back for
said.
her." But then
You paid
again,
it back for
although
her?
I've come to
The
the high
middle-aged
heaven
man
palace
was
shocked when he
What
heard
exactly
this.
does Brother
Looking
Yang
at
want
Young
me to
Kai,
do?
he asked.
A few days
"Do
ago,
you know how much she
I
owes?"
went to look for General
"I'll pay as
Manager
much as
Hua.
she owes."
She only
Young
told me
Kai
to
said
rest
lightly.
for a while.
Hoyu
and
gulped
didn't
and
give me
quietly
any
spoke the
specific
Southern Gate
tasks.
Army, asking,
Now that I'm the
"Is our
chief
palace
alchemist of
master
the High
very
Heaven
rich?"
Palace,
The
I
Southern
can't
Gate
just
Army
sit here and
glanced
wait
at her
to
and
die.
sneered.
Right?
"What does it
I
have
don't
to do with
specialize
you?
in anything
Anyway,
but alchemy.
Palace Master will
Young
pay
Kai
off your
smiled
debt
and
this
said,
time, and
what I
deduct
want
it
is
from your
Brother
monthly
G's alchemy
salary.
skills.
I guess you
Take
will
a
have
look
to
at this."
stay in High Heaven
As he
Palace for
spoke,
the rest of your
Young
life.
Kai threw the ring that
Hoyu
Gao
heard this.
Shueting gave him
Her
over.
pretty face suddenly
Jiying caught
changed
it.
as she grabbed
After
the Southern
scanning
Gate
it with
Army's
his
divine
divine
sense.
sense,
He was
"Army,
slightly
you can't
stunned.
abandon me.
"So many
I joined the
Emperor-level
High Heaven
spirit
Palace
herbs
because of you."
Young Kai
If
said,
you want to leave in the
"Brother
future,
Ji, you
you
can
can
refine
refine
as you see fit.
You must take me
There's
with
no
you."
need to rush."
The Southern
Just
Gate
let
Army
nature take its
continued
course.
to sneer
and pulled his
All
arm
right,
out.
it's definitely
On
not
the other
Brother
side,
Yang's request.
hearing Young Kai's
There's
bold
another thing
words,
I need to
everyone
ask
had
Brother
different
Ji.
reactions.
Please speak.
Some looked happy,
Young Kai's
while others
expression
looked
became
skeptical.
solemn as he asked,
After all,
how much does
the amount
Brother
of
Ji
debt
know
owed by
about the
this woman
flesh
was not
incarnation
small.
pill?
But this
Flesh
young man
incarnation
actually
pill?
said that he would
Ji
pay it
Ying's
back.
expression froze,
Did he have the
and his
financial
breathing
resources
became
to
slightly
do so?
hurried.
Those were
Could it
not
be that
low-rank
Brother
or
Yang
mid-rank
has a
source
flesh
crystals,
incarnation
but
fruit?
tens of
Young
millions of
Kai thought
high-rank
to
source
himself,
crystals.
Not only
Even
do
the
I have a
High Sky
flesh
sect and
incarnation
the Fire
fruit,
Dragon Palace
but I
would
also
not
have
be
a
able
flesh
to bear such a
incarnation
debt
fruit tree.
easily.
Who
However,
are you,
the
Your
ripe fruits
Excellency?
on the fruit
The
tree have
middle-aged
already
man
been
frowned
picked,
and looked at
so the
Young
rest
Kai.
will probably take
With
a
such
long
amazing
time to
strength
grow.
and the courage to
Without
boast so
hiding
shamelessly,
anything, Young
you
Kai
can't be a
reached
nobody,
out
right?
and took out a flesh
It's just
incarnation
paying back the
fruit.
debt.
Ji
Why are
Ying's
you
eyes
asking
lit
so
up,
much?
and he quickly
Young
got
Kai
up,
smiled slightly,
carefully taking
the
the
Southern
flesh
Gate Army
incarnation
said,
fruit.
This is
He
the High
swept it
Heaven
with his
Palace's
divine
palace
sense
master, Young
and
Kai.
examined it carefully.
You should be familiar
The
with
more
him,
he looked,
right?
the more delighted
What?
he became.
The High Heaven
He
Palace's
nodded
palace
repeatedly
master?
and said,
The High
"It
Heaven
really is a
Palace
flesh
that destroyed
incarnation
the Seeking
fruit.
Passion sect
It's exactly the
and took
same
over
as
the nest
recorded
of a
in the
magpie?
ancient records.
I heard that the
Wasn't
High
this
Heaven
thing
Palace's
extinct long
palace
ago?
master is a
How
young
could it
man.
appear now? And his
While
cultivation
looking
is
at it,
indeed
he
at the
scratched
first
his
order
ears and
emperor
cheeks.
realm.
He
He simply
seems,
couldn't bear to
see,
part with this
hearing the
flesh
Southern Gate
incarnation
Army introduction, the so-called people was shocked. Is just that no one has discovered it. They began to look at Yang Kai again. This thing by accident. The middle-aged man's face darkened. Yang Kai had more than one flesh incarnation from his forehead. Possession. It turned out that this was the High Heaven Palace's palace master. Jing suddenly raised his head and talk of the town in the northern territory wants to refine a flesh incarnation. The destruction of the Seeking Passion sect. Yang Kai nodded and said somewhat in the entire northern territory. I wanted to refine it myself. Although the High Heaven Palace had just all the materials. Its name was like felt that something was wrong. There were hundreds of millions of cultivators. There won't be a second flesh incarnation fruit in this world. So anyone with a little bit of information would be familiar with this name if he has a chance of successfully refining it. Jing frowned and pondered for a while before carefully assessing the situation and replying, the strength of the High Heaven Palace could be imagined. 30% was already a very small probability. Monster kings in the High Heaven Palace only had a 30% chance of successfully refining a flesh incarnation pill. Was destroyed so even if Yang Kai's chances were better, But
It
now,
wouldn't be much better.
it seemed that high
Looking
firmament
at it this
palace
way,
didn't just
it was
rely
indeed
on
a
the
wise
three monster
decision
kings
not to rush
succeed.
into refining
This
a flesh
seemingly young
incarnation
palace
fruit.
master wasn't easy
Can
to
you
deal
ask
with
the great
either.
emperors to
With
take
just
action?
a first-order
Young
emperor
Kai
realm
asked
cultivation,
solemnly.
honored
He was able
master,
to easily suppress
Jing
young
raised his
Kai.
head and pondered
Even in
for
the
a moment
entire
before
star
suddenly
boundary,
smiling.
there weren't many
Honored
people
master
who could
has
do
not
this.
performed alchemy
Fortunately,
since 3,000
the
years
conflict
ago.
between them wasn't
But if
too
it's a
deep.
flesh incarnation
Otherwise,
fruit,
there would be
he
no
should be
place
able
for
to make
young
an
Kai
exception.
in the Northern
I
Territory
need to return to Medicine Pill Valley.
Thinking so,
and report
the
this matter
middle-aged
to
man's
honored
expression
master.
turned solemn.
As for whether
as he
honored
hurriedly
master
cupped
will
his
take
fists
action
and
or
said,
not,
"So it
that
is
will
Palace
depend on the
Master
will of the
Yang.
heavens.
Please forgive my
Then I'll
rudeness."
have to trouble Brother G.
Seeing him like
this
this,
matter is not
the
urgent.
others also
Brother
hurriedly
G can
cupped their
return
fists
whenever
and
you have
greeted
time.
him.
I'll
Not
leave
daring
now.
to underestimate
stood
him in
up.
the slightest.
It seemed
Young
that the
Kai waved
appearance
his
of
hand
this
and
flesh
said,
incarnation
Xiao
fruit
Ho is a
was
member
quite
of my
attractive
high
to
heaven
the great
palace.
emperors.
She has
Otherwise,
caused trouble for
Jing
everyone
would
during
not
this
be in
time.
such a hurry.
And how many
Young
source
Kai
crystals
naturally
does
did
she
not
owe
urge
you?
him to stay.
Everyone, please
After
give me a
sending
price.
Jing off,
This palace
young Kai
master
went to
will
find
help her
Hua
pay it all.
Qingxi
And discussed
Everyone
the mountain
suddenly
ripple
looked at each
diagram
other in
with her.
dismay.
Hua
Before
Qingxi
they knew
really
young
knew
Kai's
about the mountain
identity,
ripple diagram.
it was reasonable
But
to
although
doubt
she knew
whether he
about
had
it,
the ability
she
to
did
pay
not know
back
how
the
it was
money.
arranged. But now that
After
they knew
all,
that he was the
she
high
had only
heaven
broken
palace's
through to
palace
the emperor
master.
realm a few years
They
ago,
had a headache
so
whether
there
to
were
collect
many
the
things
debt
she
or
did not know about before
After
reaching
all,
the
these
corresponding
debts were
level.
gambling debts.
The
not
Southgate
serious
army should know
transactions.
about it, right?
If they
Hua
offended the
Qingxi
high heaven
suddenly thought
palace
of someone.
because of this matter,
The mountain ripple
they were
diagram
afraid that the
should
gains
be a
would not
miniature
make up for
version
the
of a
losses.
spirit array.
But if they
As
didn't
an
accept
emperor
it,
array master,
they would be unwilling.
the Southgate army
This was
should
not
know
a
about
small
it.
number.
Call him
So
over.
although young Kai
Hua
was very
Qingxi
sincere
immediately
in
took
wanting
out
to
a
pay back the
communication
money for
artifact
Hoyu, and
no
sent a
one
message
spoke up.
to the Southgate
Young
army.
Kai observed them
After
carefully.
waiting for less than
So
a
how
cup
could
of
he
tea's
not know
time,
what they were
the
afraid of?
Southgate army
With a
appeared
thought,
in front
he
of
looked
them.
at the middle-aged
Palace
man and
master,
said,
head chief,
I
are you
remember
looking
that
for
Xiao
me?
Ho owes your
The Southgate
excellency
army seemed to be
2,000
doing
high-rank
well
source
these
crystals,
days.
right?
At this moment,
Yes.
their
The
faces were
middle-aged
glowing,
man nodded and
their
admitted,
previous
this
dejection
was what he had
swept
told
away.
young Kai.
Previously,
and the Southgate army
they were
2
tempted
days
by
ago.
young Kai with
Then
the Tao
please
of Spirit
count.
arrays.
The number is
and
correct.
had no choice
Young
but
Kai
to agree
casually
to
tossed
join the
a
high
space
heaven
ring to
palace
the
for
middle-aged
10
man.
years.
The
In
middle-aged
fact,
man
the
reached out
Southgate
and
army
caught
was
it.
quite unwilling.
After sweeping
But
it
as
with
time
his divine
passed,
sense,
they seemed
he
to have
confirmed that
accepted
the
their
number
fate.
was correct.
Especially
With
after
things having
young Kai
reached this
gave full
point, he could
authority
only
to
say,
arrange the spirit
"It is
arrays of the
indeed 20
entire
million."
high heaven palace.
With this opening,
the Southgate
the
army,
rest of the people
gradually
no longer
adapted to his
hesitated,
identity,
and
as
one
the
by
chief
one
emperor
reported
array
the number
master.
of source crystals
These days,
Hoyu owed
he had
them,
been searching
or the
everywhere
forces
to
behind
repair
her.
and perfect
The
the high
minimum
heaven
was 1 or
palace's
2
spirit
million
arrays,
high-rank source crystals,
consuming countless
while the
materials.
maximum was tens
This
of
feeling
millions.
of squandering made
More
him
than
feel
20 people.
inexplicably wonderful.
Young Kai spent
in
a
the
total
past,
of
when he
70
was
million
alone,
high-rank source
although he had
crystals
freedom,
to pay it all back.
his financial resources
After receiving
were
the money
limited.
they owed,
There were many
everyone's
profound
faces
and
were filled with
exquisite spirit
joy.
arrays
Among
that he
them,
could not arrange,
the earliest
even if he
ones had
wanted
been
to.
here for a year.
But now that he
But
had
they
the
had not
entire
been
high
able to
heaven
find any
palace
trace
as
of
his backing
Hoyu,
and support,
let alone get
those
back the money
theoretical
they owed.
spirit arrays were
But now that
actually
happiness
blooming
had
brilliantly
suddenly
under
fallen
his
from the
hands one
sky,
by one.
they were all
There was nothing
overjoyed.
that could make the
Getting
Southgate
back the
army
money
happier than this.
they owed meant
He
that they no
suddenly
longer
realized
had to
that
suffer
joining
here.
the high heaven
The
palace
money has
seemed
been
to be
paid
a
back.
good choice.
Young Kai
Of
crossed
course,
his hands
the most
behind his
important
back
thing was
and
still
looked at the
freedom.
crowd indifferently.
Although he was now the chief
This
array
palace
master
master
of the
has a
high
small
heaven
matter
palace,
to attend to now.
basically no one cared
about
about him.
He
He
was
was
completely
completely
in a
leading the
state
group
where he
wore a
could do
solemn
whatever he
expression
wanted
and cupped his
These
fists.
days he was extremely
Palace Master
carefree
Yang is
and
a
had
man
a
of
huge
noble
blueprint
character
in his
and
heart.
unquestionable
He was
integrity.
just waiting for a long
if there is
time
anything
to arrange
you
a
need,
shocking
please do
spirit
not
array
hesitate to
in the
ask.
high heaven palace.
The rest of the
At
people
that
also
time,
echoed in
it
unison.
might even
be able to defend against the attacks of the great emperors.
Young
As
Kai
for the
smiled
attacks
and
of the
said,
emperor realm,
after you
as
return,
long as the spirit
please spread
array
a
was
message for me.
activated,
If
they
any
could only
sect or
suffer
person
outside.
gambles with
This
Xiao Ho
dream was
again
not
in the
impossible
future.
to realize.
High Heaven Palace
but the
will not let them
prerequisite
off
was that
easily.
the high
High Heaven Palace
Everyone was shocked,
had enough financial
and Hou Yu
resources
even shouted
to support his
exaggeratedly,
actions.
"Palace master,
Did the High
just
Heaven
kill me.
Palace have the
If this
financial
news were to
resources to
spread,
do so?
how could she
The
gamble
Southgate
with
army
others
felt
that they
future.
did?"
That
Suddenly,
spirit array
she
that could
regretted
cross
joining this
territory
bullshit
was a
High
huge
Heaven
source of
Palace.
income.
Now,
So when he heard Yang
even her
Kai's
greatest
summon,
pleasure
he
had been
immediately
ruthlessly
put aside the
deprived
matter
of,
at hand,
causing
and
Hou Yu
rushed
to
to
feel
feel
a
a sense
sense
of
of
despair.
despair.
Damn
"Damn
it,
it," said
the middle-aged man
Palace master
obviously
wants
breathed
to
a
make
sigh
a
of
mountain
relief
ripple
and smiled.
diagram in the palace.
This matter is
Can
easy
you
to
do it?
handle.
Palace
Head
Master
Chief,
Yang
are you
can
looking
rest
down on
assured.
me?
The
We did not
Southgate
know that
army
this
squinted at Hua
Madam was a
Qingxi and
member of
snorted.
High Heaven Palace.
"I don't even know how
If
to
we
make
had
a
known
mountain
earlier,
ripple diagram.
there is no
So
need
how
to
can I
mention
call
the past
myself an
again."
array master?"
Yang Kai waved his
Yang
hand.
Kai nodded in
Having no
satisfaction.
intention of
"Very good.
continuing to exchange
Then I'll leave this
pleasantries
matter
with
to
these
you
people.
and Head Chief
He
Hua."
turned to Hou Yu and the
The
Southern
Southgate
Gate army
army
and
suddenly
said,
scratched his
"Let's
face
go."
and said,
The
"But I
Southern
can't
Gate
make a
army
mountain ripple
immediately threw out
diagram
the
by
Emperor
myself.
artifact flying
Why?
ship. Young Kai frowned. Entered it one
Just
by
now,
one.
this guy was acting
Soon
like
turning
he was
into
the
a
boss.
stream of light.
But in the blink of an eye,
towards High
he
Heaven
actually
Palace.
chickened out.
Do you want to
What was
gamble?
the meaning of this?
Inside the ship,
The Southgate
Young
Army
Kai
said,
looked at Ho
"It's
Yu,
like this
who
palace
looked like a
master.
frosted
The
eggplant,
mountain
and
ripple
asked.
diagram is
Ho Yu
both
raised his
simple and
head
difficult,
and nodded like
not
a
only
chicken
does it
pecking
need
at
an
a
array
rice.
master,
Pay back
it
the
also
70
needs an
million
artifact
high-rank source
refiner.
crystals first.
Both of them need
Young
to
Kai
work
grinned.
together to arrange
It won't take long.
Artifact
Just 100
refiner?
years.
That's right.
Ho Yu's eyes rolled
Strictly
back,
speaking,
and
the
he
mountain
instantly
ripple
fainted to
diagram
the
is an
ground.
artifact. Naturally, it needs an artifact refiner. Also, the requirements for the artifact
Chapter
refiner are
2787.
very high.
3
Ordinary
days later,
artifact refiners
the three of
can't
them
refine
returned
the
to
mountain
High Heaven
ripple
Palace.
diagram at all.
During this
At
period,
the very least,
Ho Yu
they
tried
need
to
to be
escape
Gao
many
source
times,
grade high rank,
but she was caught by
the
Young Kai
requirements are
every
quite
time.
high.
She
Young
didn't
Kai
have the
rubbed his
slightest
chin and
temper.
pondered. I
He
don't
felt
believe
that
that
it
it was
can
a
watch
bit
me
difficult.
for 100 years.
It couldn't be helped.
When you're not careful,
Although the High Heaven
I'll have
Palace
plenty
was
of
small,
chances
it
to
had
escape.
everything.
Ho Yu
Whether it was
sneered
an
in her heart.
alchemist, an array master,
Unfortunately,
or
this
even a
wishful
puppet
thinking
master,
was ruthlessly
they had all
shattered
kinds of
after
skills.
returning to High
The
Heaven
only thing
Palace
they didn't have
for
was
an
an
incense
artifact
stick's worth
refiner.
of time.
The Southgate
Monster.
Army's words made
Monster
Young
King?
Kai realize a
And there are
problem
3 of them.
that couldn't be
Ho
ignored.
Yu looked at the
Should
3
the High Heaven
terrifying
Palace
existences
recruit
in front of her,
or train their own
who were rolling
artifact
demonic
demonic
chi
in a
and
large
exuding a
sect,
terrifying
all
aura.
kinds of talents
Her face
were
was filled with
indispensable.
shock.
She didn't know that High Heaven
Chapter
Palace had such a
2781.
heritage. It was
After all,
unrealistic to train
Young
an
Kai was
artifact
only a
refiner
first-order
himself.
Emperor realm master.
Not only did it
How
require
many
a
masters
huge
could
amount
there
of
be in
resources,
High Heaven Palace?
but it also
Along
required
the way,
the accumulation
she didn't
of
have
time.
the chance to
Maybe
ask
it would
about
take
the High Heaven
decades
Palace
or
in
even
detail.
centuries. Now that she was
High
here,
Heaven
she was
Palace
shocked.
had just been established.
With 3 monster kings
So how
in
could it
charge,
have so much
their
time to
heritage
train
was
an
not ordinary.
experienced artifact
No
refiner?
top sect in the
If the
Northern
sect
Territory
was on the right
could compare
track in
to
the
them.
future,
This
it
is
would
my
be
High
possible
Heaven
to train
Palace's
an
newly
artifact
recruited
refiner
chief
himself.
artifact refiner.
But for now,
Young Kai
Watching
introduced
C
Ho Yu to
obviously
the 3
also
monster
considered
kings.
this issue and
Just
asked,
call her Xiaoho.
Palace Master.
N.
Why don't
Xiaoho
we
is a
recruit
lively
an
and
active
active
refiner?
refiner.
But
Anyway,
this young
the
master
sect
hopes that
doesn't
she
lack
can be
source
more crystals
crystals
now.
High Heaven Palace.
Just name the
so
price and someone will
Fei
come.
immediately said,
N.
Young Master
Kai
nodded.
nodded. Rest assured.
I'll leave this
The
matter
3
to
of
you.
us will take
Palace
turns watching
Master.
her.
I have
We
a candidate
definitely
won't
won't
let her cause any
Nan
trouble.
Gate Dajuan
Shi
suddenly
Lei and
interjected.
Xiaowei also
If it's
expressed
that
their
person,
position. The trivial mountain
Ho Yu's
ripple
face
diagram
suddenly
is nothing.
became extremely pale.
You know,
She
an
couldn't help
artifact
but take a
refiner?
few steps back
Young
and
Kai
cried
looked
out,
at him in surprise.
How can this be?
In that case,
Being
invite
watched
him
by
over.
3 monster
If
kings
this matter
in
is
turn,
successful,
how could she
High
live
Heaven
in the future?
Palace will not treat
If that
him
was
unfairly.
really the case,
Nan
forget
Gate
about
Dajuan
escaping.
laughed awkwardly.
She might not
and
even
said
have
with
the
some
slightest
embarrassment,
bit of personal
this
freedom.
person is strong and
That's
his
good.
artifact
Young
refining
Kai
skills
nodded
are also
gently.
very good.
He said to Ing
but he
Fei,
is a little troublesome.
Take her to the chief
if I go
steward
alone,
and register
I'm
her
afraid
name.
I won't be
Then
able to
arrange a
invite
place
him.
for her to stay.
So arrogant?
Yes,
Young Kai
Ing
was
Fei
surprised.
replied,
Extending
you are
his
also
hand
an array
towards Ho
master.
Yu, who would
Miss
dare
Ho,
not give you
please.
face.
I don't want
Nan
to.
Gate
Ho
Dajuan
Yu
scratched
clenched
his
his
face
teeth and
and
said,
turned to run.
Actually,
Ing
I'm
Fei
very
glanced at
approachable.
Young Kai.
Watching
Ing
Young
looked
Kai
at
nodded
him with
slightly.
disdain.
Ing
They
Fei
had known
sneered.
each other for
He
a long
turned
time,
into a stream of light
so she had
and
some
chased after
understanding
her.
of Nan Gate
In the blink
Dajuan's
of an eye,
nature. He
It
caught
was
Ho
also
Yu and
because the
lifted
High
her up
Heaven
like a
Palace
chick.
had shown great
Then,
financial
he flew into
resources
the
and
distance
strength
at a moderate speed.
as well as Young Kai's
Shi Lei
example
and
of
Xiaowei
destroying
looked
the
at each
seeking
other
passion
and
sect
slowly hurried
that
over.
they were able to
From
suppress
afar,
Nan Gate Dajuan.
Ho Yu's cursing
an array
voice could be
master.
heard before it
Otherwise,
gradually faded
if
away.
it were someone else
Young
or
Kai
another
took out his
sect,
communication
Nan Gate
compass
Dajuan would have
and
taught
left
them
a
what it
message
meant
for
to be arrogant
arrogancy.
and haughty.
Then he looked
Any
at the
artifact
Southgate
refiner
Army and said,
alchemist,
about the mountain
or array
ripple
master
map.
with a little
Get
bit
it
of
done
skill.
as soon as possible.
Which one of them wasn't arrogant?
Don't worry, Palace
Only
Lord.
the Palace Master,
With little Marquis
an Emperor
help,
realm alchemist,
the mountain ripple
usually
diagram
didn't show
won't
off.
be a problem.
He was an anomaly.
Also, tell the
Then
head
let the
chief
chief
to
steward
refine a
accompany
flight-type
you.
artifact for
Young
me
Kai waved
after I'm
his
done
hand.
with the mountain ripple
Okay.
diagram.
Watching
I
C
want
nodded.
it to be big and
The
good.
Southgate Great
So
Army
there's no
said
need to worry
embarrassedly.
about the cost.
I feel that this
Yes,
matter must be handled
matter
by
of
you,
the chief
Palace
refiner
Master.
had also been settled.
Young Kai was amused.
Young Kai was in a good
This
mood.
Palace Master
After
has a
a while,
myriad of affairs
he
to
returned
attend
to
to every
Azure Sun
day
Temple
and
through
is
the
busy
space
with
array.
official business. business.
On Lingjian
Where
Peak,
would I have the time to
young
run
Kai
around?
had just stood still when his expression suddenly
face
changed.
was also filled with
He
anger.
looked to the side and
I'm
saw
still
that
the
in the
chief
valley
steward
over
of the
there,
High Heaven Palace.
a sneaky and dark
Who would
little
dare to
beast
look
was
down on him?
curiously looking
Could
at
that
this
person
side.
be an emperor
Its eyes were
weaponsmith?
rolling around.
The Southern
as
Gate
if it was
Army's
looking for
expression
something.
turned solemn.
However,
as they nodded
because the
slightly,
place where the space
young
array
Kai's
was located
expression
was
shook
hidden
as he
by
young
young
Kai
Kai
with the
surprise.
power of the
An
Lingjian
emperor
Peak.
weaponsmith?
In the eyes of
Not
the little
bad.
beast.
So,
There was nothing
Palace
special about
it's
this
best
place.
that you make a trip
Young
there
Kai
personally
chuckled
to show your
softly
sincerity,
and recognized that
Kai
this
Young
little
rubbed his
beast
chin,
was the
his
one
eyes
he had
turning.
met in the wine
If
jar
that's
before.
the case, it looked
Indeed,
strange
it's worth
and
a
somewhat
trip.
like a puppy.
However, Dejun,
in your opinion, can this emperor weaponsmith
it should
be
be the
used by
native
our
monster
High Heaven
beast
Palace?
of Lingjian Peak.
The Southgate
It was
Army's
just that its
expression
strength
suddenly
was not
became
strong.
strange.
Anyway,
Palace
young
Master,
Kai did not feel
do you
any
mean to recruit
fluctuations
this
of
guy
power
into the
from
sect?
it.
He lifted
Yes.
his foot and
Young
stepped
Kai
forward
nodded matter-of-factly.
when his figure suddenly appeared.
From what you've said,
the little beast
this
was
emperor
obviously
weaponsmith
startled
should be someone who
and
doesn't
crept back
belong
a
to
few
any
times
sect.
vigilantly.
My high
Its
heaven
round
palace
eyes stared
is
at
currently
young Kai,
lacking talents
flashing
in
a
this area.
trace of
It's
human-like
rare to meet
vigilance.
someone like this.
However,
how can
after
we miss this
recognizing young
opportunity?
Kai,
Oh,
that trace
the
of
Southgate
vigilance
army
quickly
suddenly
disappeared.
felt a little awkward.
Instead,
After
it stuck out
hesitating
its
for a
tongue
while,
and
he
kept
said,
panting,
"Palace Master,"
as if it was acting
if it's a
coquettishly
short-term
to please him.
cooperation.
Young Kai
Then
found
this
it
emperor
interesting.
weaponsmith
He
will
reached out and
definitely help
grabbed it,
us.
touched its head,
Once
and
this
sneered,
person works with
"Are
me
you
to
lost?
set up Mountain Ripple
This
map.
is not a place
I will
where
chase
you can
him
casually
away."
come.
Although
That
the
person
level
is
of the
indeed a
birds
very
and
good
beasts
choice.
on Lingjian
But
Peak
if you
was
want to
not
keep
too
him in
high.
towering palace,
Many of them could
I
not
don't
be
recommend
resisted
it.
by this little
Young
beast.
Kai laughed and said,
Especially in this
"It's said
valley,
that people of the
there were
same
still
trade
many
are
powerful
enemies.
monster beasts.
You're an array master,
If it was
and
really
he's a
encountered by
weaponsmith.
those powerful
Both of you
monster
are proficient in
he
different
was afraid
territories.
that it would be swallowed
There shouldn't
in one
be any
bite.
conflicts, right?
In fact, Young
That's
Kai
not
was
the
also
problem.
very curious.
It's just that,
How did such a
AI
black
palace
dog-like
master,
little beast
if you
survive
see
in
what that
Lingjian
person
Peak?
looks like, you'll
After
know what I
being
mean.
touched by Young Kai's
Regarding
hand,
this emperor weaponsmith,
the little black dog
the
showed a trace
Southgate
of
army
joy.
seemed to be
Its
quite
eyes
afraid,
narrowed,
and didn't
it
explain
quietly
it in
climbed on
detail.
Young Kai's hand,
Young Kai
motionless,
asked too many questions,
gently shaking his
and
head.
just wanted
His
to let
figure
Young Kai
flickered,
see it for
and
himself.
he appeared outside
He didn't
Lingjian
want his
Hall.
words to cause
Bending
Young
down,
Kai to have
Young Kai
preconceived
placed the
notions.
little black dog
However,
down.
since
But
there
he
was an
didn't
emperor
expect that the
weaponsmith
little
who
guy
was
would
like a
actually
wild
cling
crane,
onto him tightly.
Young Kai could
Unwilling
only
to
follow
let
the
go.
Southgate army
Young
on
Kai
this
was
trip.
suddenly happy.
Fortunately,
He bent his
there
finger
wasn't anything urgent to
inflicted on
do
the little
recently.
black dog's forehead.
By the way,
at
is there
this
still
moment
no
a
news
sudden
from
change
Zhu Qing?
occurred?
Before
The little
leaving,
black dog,
Young Kai
which had
suddenly
been
calm
calm
and
and
well-behaved,
asked Hua Qing
opened
Si.
its mouth
Hua
without
Qing
warning
Si
and
shook
bit
her
Young
head and
Kai's
said,
finger.
"Is
One
Palace
man
Master
and one
worried
beast,
about her?"
for eyes
If you
looked
are,
at each other.
I'll ask
Young
Monster
Kai was
King to go
startled
and
for a
look for
moment.
her.
He did not
No
expect
need.
such a thing
Young
to
Kai
happen.
waved his hand.
Immediately
He
after,
casually threw a
Young
jade
Kai
slip
furrowed his
and
brow
said without turning
because
his
a trace
head,
of pain was
"This is the
transmitted
Star
to him
Soul
from his
Palace's
finger.
decision on your
At the
punishment."
same time,
Take
a
a
trace
look.
of violent
Hua
power
Qing
suddenly
Si was
shook his
shocked
dantian
and reached out to
his
take
face
it.
changed.
Her divine
And
sense
before he could
invaded
think
it and checked it.
The little black
Soon,
dog actually
her
ran
nervous
away with its
expression
tail between
disappeared
its legs
and was
without
replaced
looking
by
back.
a smile.
Its mouth was
The
still
decision on her
whimpering,
punishment
as
in
if
the
it had
jade
been
slip
greatly
was very
frightened.
simple.
Young
Hua
Kai
Qing
raised
Si
his
was
hand
still a
and
disciple of the
examined
Star
it in
Soul
front of
Palace,
his eyes, but the Star
revealing a
Soul
look of
Palace would not
disbelief
interfere with
under
her
the little
freedom.
black dog's
In other
bite.
words,
His
she
finger
could
was
go
actually
wherever she
bitten
wanted.
open.
There
And
were
it didn't
several
matter
clear teeth
even if she
marks
never
that
went
went deep
deep
into
into
the
the
Star
bone,
Soul Palace,
and golden blood
although it was
quickly
just a
flowed
simple
out.
jade slip.
Was it bitten open?
And not an official
How is this
document of the
possible?
Star Soul
Young
Palace.
Kai's physical
The jade
fitness was
slip
strong.
contained Princess
Even in the
Lansun's
Emperor
Soul
realm,
brand.
it could be
With
said
this
to be
jade
the best.
slip in hand,
Except for
even
some
if
gifted
Hua
monster
Qing Si
clan,
still had the
Young
status
Kai
of a
was not
disciple
afraid
of
of
the Star
anyone
Soul Palace.
in terms of physical
It was
fitness.
equivalent to leaving the Star Soul Palace, and she would no longer have to worry
Not
about
to
it
mention
in the
a little
future.
beast that looked
This was the result of
unremarkable.
the discussion
Even if
between
he was
Young
bitten
Kai
by someone
and
in the
Lan Sun
Emperor
a few
realm,
days ago,
under the
although
condition
Lan
that he
Sun
did
was the
not
daughter
use
of
his
the great
strength,
emperors of the
his
Bright
skin
Moon
and flesh
Palace
would not be bitten
and had a
open.
higher status
But in fact,
than even
the little
the
black
elders in the
dog
Star
did so.
Soul Palace.
It looked like it was
Hua
just a
Qing Si
casual
was
bite,
now a master
and it did
in the
not
Emperor
even use
realm.
much strength.
Even Lan
How
Sun
could
did
its
not
little
have the
teeth
right
be
to
so
expel
sharp?
her at will.
Young Kai frowned,
She gave Young
and his
Kai
expression
faith,
was strange.
and since she could not
He
expel
vaguely
Hua
felt
Qing
that the
Si
little
from the
black
Star
dog
Soul
was
Palace,
not ordinary.
she would no
What
longer
shocked Young
restrict
Kai
her
the most
freedom.
was that after the
Outside
little
the
black
High Heaven
dog bit
Palace,
his finger,
the Southgate
ancient
army
demonic
threw out an
chi
object which
that
suddenly
had been sealed
grew in
in
the
midair
dantian shook
and turned into
One
the
must
shape
know
of a
that
small
the ancient
boat.
demonic
He
chi
smiled
had
and
always
said,
been sealed by
"Palace
the
Master,
Tsongshu's
please."
gold and silver
Young
powers,
Kai glanced at the
and was
flying boat and
extremely
raised his
stable.
brow.
For so
This
long,
thing is pretty good.
Young Kai had not
This
felt
was
any
obviously a
abnormalities.
flight-type artifact,
But today
and
it was an
unexpectedly
emperor artifact
triggered.
at that, and it was
Pretty
triggered by a
good
little black
was more
dog.
than enough to describe
What was going
it.
on?
Carefully
There weren't many
examining the
emperor
seal on his
artifact flight-type
dantian,
artifacts in
Young
the
Kai
entire star
determined that
boundary,
there were no hidden dangers,
and they were worth at least
that
tens
little
riot
millions
just
of
now
high-rank
seemed to be a
source
sudden
crystals.
event.
The fact that the
such a
Southgate
coincidence
army could
young
have one
Kai
showed
couldn't
how
help
rich
but
they were.
associate it with the
The
little black
Southgate
dog.
army gave a
He
hollow
swept
laugh.
out his divine
I won it
thoughts
from a bet,
and soon
I
found
can't
the little
afford
black
this thing.
dog in a cave not
Is there
far
such
away.
a good thing?
At this
Young
moment,
Kai clicked his
it was
tongue in
hiding more than
amazement
100
and
feet
stepped
underground.
up to the flying boat.
And for some
This
reason,
flying boat
it had
didn't
fallen
look big
asleep
to the naked eye.
It was unknown what
only about
frightened it
10
in its
meters in
sleep,
length,
but its
and
body
could
was
only
trembling.
accommodate 3 to
It had
5
bitten
people
someone,
standing side by
but it
side.
still pretended to
However,
be hurt.
when
Young
Kai
was
raised
speechless.
his foot, the
He wanted
Southgate
to catch
army
it back
suddenly
and check
formed a
it carefully.
seal.
A
But now he
vortex
could only
like
give
passage
up.
immediately
What's
appeared
going
above
on?
the flying
A
boat.
cold shout came.
Young Kai stepped into the
looked
vortex
up,
and
and
saw
his
Gao
vision
Shueting
suddenly
suddenly
changed.
appear on the
He was
Lingjian
stunned
peak.
in place.
Her beautiful
What he
eyes
saw was
swept
no
around
longer
as
a
if she
simple
was looking
flying
for
boat.
something.
The interior
asked,
space was actually
"What happened here
incomparably
just now?"
large.
There
Young
was a
Kai's
large
heart
hall in
skipped a
front
beat,
of him,
and he
that
said
could
with a blank
accommodate
face,
at least a
"What do you
few dozen
mean?"
people.
Gao
Without
Shueting
feeling
said,
crowded,
I felt
with
a
the
sweep
sweep
of
of
his
his
divine
divine
fluctuation.
he found
that
that
there
there
were
were
a
a
few
few
extremely
extremely
luxurious
luxurious rooms
Is there
inside.
anything unusual
There was
here?
even a staircase
What's
on the
unusual?
side.
winding
Yang
upwards.
Kai denied flatly.
The interior of the flying boat had 2 levels with my new divine technique. It was clearly a huge ship with multiple towers. Perception was extremely
Southgate
sharp.
Army's figure
The
appeared
ancient
beside
demon
Yang
Chi
Kai.
and his dantian
Yang Kai turned his
had
head
only
and
moved
glanced
for a
at him.
moment.
You
And
won
it
this
had already
treasure
been
from a
withdrawn.
bet?
Previously,
But she had not noticed
Yang
it.
Kai thought that
In the
this was
past,
just a simple
when
flying
Yang Kai
boat
was first
artifact
eroded
and
by the demonic
estimated
chi
that it
and
was
became
worth
the
tens
demon
of
race,
millions of
he
high-rank
had fought
source
against
crystals.
3 opponents.
But now
Gao
it seemed that
Shueting,
this thing was worth
Chun
at
Wenhao
least
of the
hundreds of
Heavenly
millions,
Martial Holy Land,
perhaps even more.
and Feng Ming of the
I was just
Orthodoxy
lucky.
Temple.
The Southgate
time,
Army laughed dryly.
Yang Kai was only
His
in the Dao
expression a
Source
little
realm.
unnatural.
Facing the 3
Obviously,
great emperors,
he didn't want to
he was under
continue
a lot of
discussing
pressure.
this topic.
In the
So
end,
he stretched out
he had
his
to
hand
use
and
his
said,
trump card.
Palace
After becoming
Master,
the demon race
you can
to
find
escape.
a place to rest.
Even now,
It's not
Yang
far
Kai
or
did
near,
not dare to
and will
confess
take
to Gao
about 3 days
Shueting.
to get there.
If she knew that he was
And
the
thank
demon
you for
from
your
back
hard
then.
work.
God
Yang
knows
Kai
if
nodded
Gao
and walked
Shueting
up
would
the
chop
stairs
him
to
with
the
her
2nd
sword.
floor.
Is
where
that
he
so?
randomly found
Gao
a room,
Shueting frowned
pushed
slightly,
the door open and glanced
Obviously,
around.
her doubts had
He
not
found that this
disappeared.
room was
If Yang
luxuriously
Kai was just
decorated,
experimenting
but also
with a divine
exquisitely.
technique.
There was
She
a
would
sculpture of a
definitely not feel
monkey's head
disgusted.
standing on one side,
But the energy
shading its
fluctuation
eyes with
just
its
now
hand
made her
as it looked into
instinctively
the
feel
distance.
disgusted.
It was a
It was
lifelike
just that the
sculpture.
energy
Yang
fluctuation
Kai
lasted
frowned
too
slightly,
short.
suddenly
and it
feeling
disappeared
that
before
this
she
monkey
could feel
looked
it
a little
clearly.
familiar.
So she could
At
not
that
remember
moment,
where she had
the flying
encountered
boat
it.
buzzed and sped
Of
up.
course,
Its speed
Yang
went
Kai's
from
back
slow
was
to
also
fast,
covered in cold
and in
sweat.
the blink of an eye,
But his face was
it was no
serious as he
slower than
changed
the
the
3rd
topic.
layer Emperor Realm
Senior
Master
Sister
rushing
Gao.
at full speed.
Purple Bamboo Peak
This made
is
Yang
very
Kai
far
sigh
from
even
here.
more.
How did you
This
get
was a
here
good
so
thing.
quickly?
He flew
Gao
onto his
Shueting
bed,
said,
sat down
I was just
cross-legged,
passing by,
and closed his
I just
eyes
came
to
from the
adjust his
temple
breathing.
master.
Along the
After
way,
a pause, she
the flying
continued,
boat was
but
extremely
then again,
smooth,
and
where
didn't
have you
even
been
feel the
hiding?
slightest
Why
vibration.
couldn't I find you when
No
I
one
came
dared
here
to
to
block
block
the way
before
and robbed them.
yesterday?
But then
I
again,
was still in the
with
northern
how fast
territory
this
the day
flying
before
ship was,
yesterday.
perhaps
So
only
of course
a
you
third
couldn't
layer
find
Emperor
me.
Realm Master would be able to stop it. 3 days
Thinking
passed
so
in the
in
blink
his
of an
heart,
eye. Yang Kai replied.
The speed of the flying
I
boat
went into
suddenly
secluded
slowed down a lot.
cultivation for a while.
Then it buzzed and came
Gao
to a
Shueting
stop.
looked at him
Yang
suspiciously.
Kai opened his eyes
Yang
and heard a
Kai's
knock on the
evasive
door.
answer made her a little
Yang Kai got up
suspicious.
and opened the door.
But since Yang Kai
only
did
to
not
see
want
the
to talk
Southgate
about
Army
it,
standing
she
outside.
did not want to get to the
He
bottom
said,
of it.
"We're almost
She
there,
just
Palace
nodded and
Master.
said,
We'll
then
need
do
to
as
fly
you
the rest
please.
of the way.
I'll take my leave
Are there
first.
any barriers blocking
Senior
the flying
Sister
boat?"
Gao.
Yang Kai
Kai
raised his hand
That's
and called
not
out
it.
to her.
The Southgate
Is there
Army
anything
smiled
else?
awkwardly and
Gao
explained.
Shueting paused and asked.
It's just that we can't
Yang
let
Kai
that guy
said,
see this flying
Senior
boat.
Sister Gao Shueting
Otherwise it'll
seems
be
to
a
be in
little
a hurry,
troublesome.
and you look worried.
He didn't explain
Did
clearly.
you encounter some trouble?
So Yang Kai didn't
Maybe I
ask
can
any
help
more
you.
questions.
Gao
And
Shueting
disembarked
said lightly,
with the Southgate Army.
"This is a secret of the
Immediately.
temple.
The
You're
sound
just
of the
the guest
rising
elder,
and falling waves
so you're
could
not
be
qualified
heard.
to know
The
too
sea
much.
breeze that carried
Well,
a
if you're
slight
willing,
fishy smell could be
Senior
felt.
Sister, don't
making
say
people
anymore."
feel relaxed and
Yang
happy.
Kai hurriedly stopped her.
Looking up,
Yang Kai was
the
already
sky was
forced
clear
to
as
become
if
a
it had
guest
been
elder
washed
of the
clean.
temple.
There were no
So how could he
clouds for
remove the
thousands
word
of
guest?
miles.
After
flying
all,
all
he
the
was
way,
also a temple
they actually
master.
arrived at the sea.
By the way,
that
I'm going
person
to go
lives
out
on an
soon.
island? Go
Yang
if you
Kai
want.
asked
No
in
one will
surprise.
keep you.
Yes,
Gao Shueting's
the
voice
Southgate
came,
Army
and she
nodded and led
disappeared.
the way.
This way. The two immediately flew away. Although the Southgate Army had the Emperor
Chapter
Realm's
2788.
he wasn't
Brother
good at
Yang.
fighting. And his
In the
Emperor
Violet
Qi
Source
wasn't
Chamber
very
of
pure,
Commerce's branch,
so his speed
Kong
wasn't
Si
very
Ran
fast.
walked in with a beaming
Yang
face
Kai followed behind
and
him
cupped his fists
unhurriedly.
enthusiastically.
Looking down,
The
Yang
sea
Kai got
stretched
up
as
and
far as
returned
the
the eye
greeting.
could see.
Brother Kong,
Occasionally,
sit
some
down
sea
and
beasts
talk.
would show up.
You and I
which
are
was
not
quite
outsiders.
interesting.
After
Kong
an
Si Ran
hour,
gestured.
they suddenly
Then
heard
turned
the sound
around
of
and saw a
seabirds.
maidservant
Yang
serving
Kai
excellent
immediately
tea
understood
outside the
that
door.
they should be arriving
After
soon.
closing the door,
In
Kong
this
Si
vast
Ran
sea,
said,
there were
"Brother
only a
Yang,
few islands
did you
where
come
these
here to pick up
ordinary
the
birds
goods?"
would appear.
N. The 2-month deadline is almost up. Chapter
How are your
2782.
preparations?
Sure
Si
enough,
Ran smiled
after
and
a
said,
short while,
Brother
an
Yang's
island
business
that was
is
neither
big,
big nor
so
small
President
appeared
Liu is
before their
naturally
eyes.
working hard.
It could be said
Space
to be a
spirit
kind of
crystals
visual
and space
enjoyment for
spirit
an
jades
island
have
with
been
green
prepared.
mountains
And
clear
saying so,
waters.
he took
to
out a
suddenly
space here
ring
in this
and
boundless
put it on the
sea.
table before
The
pushing
island
it
wasn't
towards
very
Yongkai.
big.
Only a few
These
dozen
goods are
acres
worth
in
a total
size.
of 40 million
On the
high-rank
beach,
source
the
crystals.
waves were breaking
Brother
and birds
Yang,
were
please
flying.
check them.
Yongkai
No
and the
need.
Southern Gate
Yongkai
Army
shook
landed.
his head.
If it was someone
Yongkai
else doing
suddenly
this
frowned
business,
and looked at the
Yongkai
Southern
might
Gate
have
Army
really checked
strangely.
to see if these goods were
Isn't that
enough.
Grandmaster
But
from
since
No
it was
sect?
Kong Si Ran,
Why are there so many
there was
people
no
on
need
this
to do
island?
so.
Kong
When
Si
he
Ran
scanned the
definitely
island with
wouldn't
his
speak
divine
him.
sense just
In
now,
fact, he
the
clearly
space
found
spirit crystals
traces of
and
people
space
on this
spirit
island.
jades.
There
Worth
were at
40
least
million
20
high-rank
people,
source crystals,
and there were even 5
needed
or
to be
6
transferred
people
from
from
the
the major
emperor realm
branches
among them.
in the southern
If it weren't for
territory
so many
within 2
people
months.
from the emperor realm,
It took a lot of effort.
Yongkai would have
and
thought
a lot
that
of
this
manpower
island
and
was the base
financial
of some small
resources were
sect.
consumed during
However,
this period.
no small
Of
sect
course,
could have so
with
many
Lu
people
Chi's
from
full
the emperor
operation,
realm. and
hearing
Kong
Yang
Si
Kai's
Ran's constant
question,
monitoring,
the Southern
they
Gate
finally
Army
managed
was about
to
to
gather
explain
enough.
when a stream
There
of
was
light
still some
suddenly
left,
rushed over.
but they were all given to
Obviously,
Yang Kai by
it had
Kong
sensed
Si
the
Ran,
auras of Yang
compared
Kai
to
and
such
the
a
Southern
big
Gate
business
Army,
deal,
and came
these
to
additional
investigate.
goods were not worth
Palace
mentioning.
Master, don't
How
say
much do I
anything
have
later.
to pay?
I'll
Yang
deal
Kai
with it.
asked.
The
Brother
Southern
Yang
Gate Army
previously
hurriedly
paid a
sent a
deposit
message
of 10 million,
as if he was
and the
afraid of
other
something.
two 12th order
Yang
monster
Kai
cores are
frowned,
worth 13
feeling
million.
that this trip was a
So
little
Brother Yang
strange.
still needs
The
to pay
stream of light
17 million
dissipated,
high-rank source crystals,
revealing the figure of
Kong
a middle-aged
Si Ran
man
reported,
who was
in
exuding
addition,
a second-order
Vice President
Emperor realm
Lu said that if
cultivation.
Brother Yang
The man
doesn't
glanced
pay
at
in
Yang
Yang
Kai
Kai
and the Southern Gate
it's
Army
fine
and
if he
asked
takes
casually,
the 12th order monster
"Who are you?"
cores. He
Yang
didn't
Kai
care too
grinned.
much about
That's
two
a good
first-order
plan,
Emperor
President
realm
Lu.
masters.
I'll pay in
So he
source
wasn't too
crystals.
vigilant.
Although
When
he had a
asked
lot
the
of monster
question,
cores,
there was
he
a
couldn't
faint
take
trace
them
of
out
arrogance
casually.
on his face.
Once there were
The
too
Southern
many
Gate
12th
Army
order monster
immediately gritted
cores
his
circulating
teeth
on
and
the
replied,
market. We're
the
here
price
to
would
collect
affect
debts.
the market.
Debts.
Of course,
Yang Kai
turned
wouldn't
his head
do something
and
like
glanced at the
digging his
Southern
own
Gate
grave.
Army. As
Only
for
to
the
find
source
that he had a
crystals,
serious
he could
and
even pay
resentful
off
look on his
Hoyu's
face,
70 million
as
gambling
if he was a
debt.
creditor.
What was
What's
17
going
million
on?
to him?
Yang Kai was full
Soon,
of doubts.
after
but he
completing
couldn't
the
ask clearly.
transaction,
Unexpectedly,
Kong Si Ran took out a
after hearing
document,
this,
and
the
the two
middle-aged
of them
man
left
nodded
their soul
slightly.
marks on each other.
So you're a kindred
indicating
spirit.
that this
How much
transaction
does that
had
guy
been
owe you?
successfully
The
completed.
Southern Gate Army
Yang
did
Kai
not
said,
even need to think.
I'll have to trouble
5
Brother
million
Kong to
high-grade
continue
source
purchasing
crystals.
space
What
spirit
about you?
crystals and space
The
spirit
middle-aged
jades
man
for me.
snorted.
Help me
20
send it
million.
to Azure Sun Temple.
If I find him,
I'll
no
definitely
problem.
skin him
Kong
alive.
Si Ran nodded.
How despicable.
Speaking of which,
the Southgate
congratulations
Army
to
nodded in
Yang
agreement,
Kai for his
pulling out his
promotion to the
tendons
position
and
of
flaying
Elder
his
of
skin
Azure
is
Sun
too
Temple.
easy. If he
Just
falls
an
into
honored
my
guest
hands,
elder,
I will
Yang Kai
definitely
shook
let
his
him
head.
taste all the
Kong Si
torture in
Ran
the
said.
world. The
Aha.
Chamber of Commerce
The
also
middle-aged
received
man
an
smiled and
invitation
nodded.
last time.
Very good.
But this Kong was
the
busy
army
with
at the
space
Southgate
spirit
asked,
crystals and
"Are
space
the people
spirit
here all
jades
here to
and
collect
couldn't get
debts?"
away.
Not
I'm
bad.
ashamed that I
The
couldn't go and
middle-aged man nodded
congratulate
and
you.
said,
Brother
"We've also
Kong,
reached an
don't be so
agreement.
polite.
If we can
Let's
find
not talk
that
about
bastard,
it."
we'll
Yang
stall
Kai
him
smiled
immediately,
slightly, and then
the
warned him.
transaction was
The
completed.
rest of the people
So the two
immediately
chatted
rushed
casually
over
for a while,
and made it impossible
after
for
asking
that guy
about
to
Kong
escape.
Si Ran's recent
Since the two of
situation,
you are also here
Yang
to
Kai
collect
learned
debts,
that he was
then
now
I'll
like a
count you
fish in
water in the
However,
branch in Maplewood
I have
City.
to remind you that
Originally,
there seems to be an
he only had
extremely
the
brilliant
cultivation
array
of the
formation
first
on
order
this
Dao
island.
Source realm.
Don't let go
He
of
couldn't
anything
sit in the
suspicious.
position of branch manager
you.
no matter what.
Daju cupped his
However,
fists,
because he
it
was
doesn't
very
matter.
familiar with
We're all
Maplewood City,
victims.
we
He was
should help
given
each
an
other.
important position.
The middle-aged man replied politely. He gave the army
However,
at the South Gate
before
a few more
encountering
words
Yang
before
Kai's
turning
business,
around.
he
and
had already
flying off
reached
into
the
the
end
end
of
of his
his
career as a
The
steward.
army at the South
It
Gate
wouldn't be
watched
long
him leave,
before he was
then
transferred
winked
out
at
of
Yang
Maplewood
Kai
City,
before
quietly
a
moving
place
to
that
the
was
other side of the
overflowing with
island.
wealth.
What's
At
going
that
on with
time,
that
he
artifact
might even be
refining
sent to some
grandmaster?
remote place.
Yang Kai asked.
But Yang Kai's
So many
huge
people are
business
here
deal
to
allowed
collect
him to
debts.
turn over a new
How much
leaf.
money does he
And
owe?
he was highly
Who
valued
knows?
by Wuxia
The army at the
transaction
South
worth
Gate
40
had a
million.
look of
Who
disappointment
could
on
be
his
so
face.
generous?
Not to
Yang
mention,
Kai clicked his
Yang
tongue
Kai
and
also
said,
promised to
"Seeing
bring
how
two
skilled you are
12th
in
order
dealing
monster
with
beast
it,
monster
you
cores.
seem to have
To
expected
violate
this
source
scene
Chamber
long
of
ago.
Commerce every
The
6
army
months.
at the South Gate
This
said
was
with
a
a bitter
long-term
face.
business deal.
That's why that
Because
guy
of
is
this,
so hateful.
Kong Si
This
Ran's
isn't the first
position
time
as a
something
branch
like this has
manager
happened.
couldn't be replaced.
Yang Kai asked
After
curiously,
all, Yang Kai
"Isn't
gave
he an
face to
artifact
Kong Si
refining
Ran.
grandmaster?
That was why he made
Shouldn't a
such an
few Emperor
agreement
artifacts
with
be
Violet
enough
Source
to pay
Chamber
off
of
the debt?
Commerce? The
Now,
army at the South
among
Gate
the several
side,
branch managers,
no matter how many
Wuxia
Emperor
looked at
artifacts
Kong
he
Si
refines,
Ran in a new
he
light.
can't afford to
And
gamble.
many big customers
This
were
grandmaster
appointed
actually
to him,
gambles,
especially
Yang
after
Kai
the
said
branch
in shock.
manager named Gu
More
Hong
than
left
that,
Maplewood
he's simply
City.
addicted to gambling.
All the customers
That's
that belong
fine,
to Gu Hong
but he
were
loses
taken
every time
over
he
by Kong
gambles.
Si Ran.
The army
Now,
at the
Kong
South
Si
Gate
Ran
said
was
with
the
a look
number
of
one
disdain.
manager of Violet
That's why I
Source
said
Chamber
this
of
guy is a
Commerce's
bit
branch.
troublesome. Then Gu
Yang
Hong
Kai
left
was
Maplewood
suddenly
City,
startled and asked,
Yang Kai was a
"That
little
flying boat emperor artifact, thinking that it was no wonder he didn't see him on this trip. The army at the South Brother Yang came last time. I was forced the initiative to ask to be transferred out of Maplewood City. With just a few words, President Liu naturally had a deep understanding of this emperor artifact, so he immediately waved his hand. He had never let him go. Kong Si Ran grinned from ear to ear. This guy is really strange. Originally, he actually gambled with the flying emperor artifact, worth hundreds of millions of gold coins, and lost. But in the end, no wonder so many debtors are blocking his door, who had the absolute advantage, took the initiative to leave. His life is really miserable. He probably felt that there was no possibility of him arrived at a mountain wall. This is all thanks to Brother Yang. The army at the Southgate sneakily released his divine sense to investigate, feeling that it was all Yang Kai's credit. And after confirming that no one was paying attention, he faintly felt that he had token and waved it. So he asked, a ripple immediately appeared on a stone wall of the mountain wall.
Kong
revealing
Si-ran
a
didn't know
passage
why
big
he
enough
asked
for
this,
one person
but he
to
still
enter
thought
and
for a
exit.
while and said,
The army at the
he was in a
south gate
hurry
hurriedly
and
rushed in,
and he seemed to be
called
in a
out to
bad
Young
mood,
Kai at the
as
same
if a
time.
disaster was about
After
to
Young
befall
Kai
him.
entered, he closed
That
the
scoundrel.
entrance.
Seemingly
Young Kai
seeing
slapped
Young
his thigh
Kai's
and coldly
suspicion,
snorted.
The army at
What's
the
wrong?
south gate took the
Kong
initiative
Si-ran
to
was
explain.
startled.
Young
I
helped
helped
her
her
arrange
arrange
the
the spirit
I
array.
understand why he
Without
suddenly
this illusion
asked to
array,
be transferred
she
out
would
of
have nowhere
Maplewood
to
City.
hide.
He was
You have a
afraid
good
that I would come to
relationship.
settle accounts
Young
with
Kai
him.
chuckled.
Kong
Palace
Si-ran
Master,
asked
don't
suspiciously,
compare me to her.
how did Gu Hong
The
offend
army at
Brother
the
Yang?
south gate had a look of
Young Kai
disdain on
said,
his face.
What kind of
If
crime
others
is
know that
selling
I
a
know her,
customer's
I'm
information
afraid
in the
I'll be in
Chamber
big
of Trouble?
trouble.
Is it
Kong
that
Si-ran
serious?
was shocked when he
Young
heard
Kai's
this,
face was
and
filled
said
with black
solemnly,
lines.
This is a
Southgate
serious
dodged you
crime,
and poured out
and
his
if it is
grievances and
verified,
said,
he will be
Palace
executed
Lord,
immediately.
You haven't
What does
experienced
Brother
her
Yang mean?
shamelessness. Back then, I helped her pay off a lot of debts. Young Kai
Those
continued,
creditors came to me one
after
by one.
participating in the
Even
auction
now,
in Maplewood
I still
City.
remember it vividly.
I was stopped by the
As
sex
he said
master
this,
of Broken
he actually
Mountain
shivered.
sect.
Young
Kai didn't know what to
when
say.
I was leaving the city.
It seemed that this
At that
Emperor
time,
artifact
I found it
master
strange.
had left a
How
lot
did
of
this guy know where I
psychological
was
trauma
going?
in the army
Furthermore,
at the south gate.
he was able to
They
accurately
walked all the way
intercept me.
inside. Now,
After
it
walking
seems
for
that someone
several
is behind
incense
this.
sticks worth of time,
What?
The
Lu
front
Dong was
suddenly
killed by
opened
Brother
up.
Yang?
A huge
Kong
car
Si-ran
cave
was
appeared
taken
in their
aback.
field of vision.
Kong Si-ran was aware of the news of Lu Dong
There was
Zheng's
nothing
death.
in the car's cave,
After all,
but there
he
were
was
many
the sect
forks in
master
all
of a
directions,
sect,
and a
they
big
didn't know
client
where they
of
led.
Violet Source Chamber
Palace
of
Master,
Commerce.
please wait a
Kong
moment.
Si-ran would
After
naturally
the
pay
army at the
attention to
south
this
gate
matter,
said this,
especially
he
after
head
he took
and
over
looked at
Gu
the
Hong's
forks.
client.
After a
Lu
short
Dong was
while,
originally
his eyes
Gu
locked
Hong's
onto one of the
customer,
forks, and
and
he
since
coughed
Kong
lightly.
Si-ran took
Little
over,
Marquis
he
come
naturally
out.
had to pay him a
No
visit.
one responded,
But when he went
only
to
the
Broken
voice
Mountain
of the army
sect,
at the south
he
gate,
learned that Lu
echoing
Dong's
in the
natal
car's
light
cave.
had gone out.
Come out,
And he
do you
had
think I
obviously
can't see
died
you?
an
The
unnatural
army
death.
at the south gate's
After
face
Lu Dong's
darkened,
death,
and he shouted,
Broken Mountain
Don't
sect
come
also
over,
scattered,
or I'll die before
and
you.
its thousands of
Suddenly,
disciples
a
went their
woman's
separate
voice
ways.
sounded, but it
After
was
inquiring
extremely
about
weak,
the time,
as if she had
Kong
suffered a
Si-ran
serious
learned that
injury,
Lu Dong died
and her
after the
words were
auction.
full of
Not
self-abandonment.
many people knew about this
woman.
matter,
And
Young
Kai
Kai
was
Si-ran
stunned,
did not know who
previously,
killed Lu Dong.
when Nan Men
But now
Dejun
he
introduced
understood
this
that it was
Emperor
Young Kai
artifact
who did
master.
it. Although his
face was full
cultivation
of
was not
disdain and
high,
disgust,
as the
and his
manager of
words were
Violet
like,
Source
this guy
Chamber
is
of
a bastard.
Commerce.
His
Young
mind
Kai
was
thought it was a
extremely
man,
sharp, but
and
he
from
didn't
Young
expect
Kai's
it to be a
words,
woman.
he was able
This
to guess
came
the
as a
truth of
surprise
the
to
matter.
Young Kai,
Obviously,
but he soon relaxed.
after the auction,
It wasn't as
Gu
if he
Hong
had
had
never
revealed
met a
Young
female
Kai's
artifact
whereabouts to Lu
refiner
Dong
before.
And
Young
then Lu
Yen was a
Dong
top
had wanted to
artifact
intercept
refiner
and
and
kill
spirit
him,
array grandmaster,
but his skill was inferior.
The army at the
and
south
he had
gate's
been
face
killed
darkened,
instead.
and he angrily
Young
said,
Kai and Lu Dong had a
Idiot,
grudge.
can't you recognize my
and Kong
voice?
Si-ran knew about it.
The woman hidden
reason
in the
why
forks
Gu
was
Hong
silent
targeted
for a
Young
moment.
Kai was even
But
simpler.
Young Kai clearly
He was
felt
competing with
eyes
Kong
observing
Si-ran
his
for the
place.
position of
A
manager.
moment later, and when
A
he saw
figure
that
wrapped
Kong
in a
Si-ran's
breeze
position
pushed over
was stable
and
because
stood
of
not
Young
far
Kai,
away.
he
Dejun,
naturally
it's you.
became
The
anxious.
woman cried out in
Thinking
surprise.
so, Kong
Young
Si-ran
Kai
said
took
with
a closer
sullen
look
face,
and found that although this
matter
woman's
is of great
appearance
importance,
wasn't enough to cause
Brother
the
Yang,
downfall of a nation,
please wait for a moment.
she was still
I
quite
have to report
extraordinary.
this to President
She
Liu.
wore a long floral
Young Kai
dress
said,
that gave her a cute
Forget
and playful
it.
appearance.
Since Lu Dong is
but her
dead
figure
and Gu
was full
Hong
of
has taken
maturity.
the initiative to
However,
transfer.
for some unknown
This
reason,
matter ends here.
her expression
There is
was
no
somewhat
need to trouble
dispirited.
President Liu.
The woman was
A
very
trivial
happy
Gu
to
Hong
meet an
was
old
nothing in
friend
his
after a
eyes.
long
So
separation.
there was no need for
and
him
after
to
a
make
short
such
pause,
a big fuss.
she rushed
Kong
straight
Si-ran
towards the
said,
army at the south
Brother
gate.
Yang,
What are
you
you
don't
doing?
know. The Chamber
The
of
army at the
Commerce
south
values
gate
its
was obviously
reputation the
prepared.
most.
He
Without
stretched
it,
out a hand
the Chamber
and
of
pressed it on her
Commerce
head.
would be finished.
His Emperor Qi
Gu Hong
surging,
dared to
firmly
privately
fixing
leak
her in
information
place.
about our
The
customers,
woman smiled flatteringly
which is
and said
absolutely
coquettishly,
unacceptable to the
Dejun,
Chamber of Commerce.
Young Kai
If we
felt
let him go
goosebumps
this
all
time,
over his body,
who knows what
and
kind
he
of trouble
felt
he will cause
uncomfortable.
next time.
How dare
Since
you
he
be so
mentioned the
presumptuous?
Chamber of Commerce's
The
reputation, army at the south gate
Young
shouted
Kai could not
angrily.
stop him.
His Emperor
So
Qi
he said,
surging in his
but
palm
there is no
as
real
he tried to
evidence.
push push her away.
Kong Si Ran
The
said.
woman resisted
There
the
is no
pressure
need for evidence
and took a few steps
this matter
forward,
is obvious.
rushing into
I
the
believe
arms
President
of the army
Lu can
at the
see
south
it.
gate.
Saying
She
so,
turned
he
around
walked out
and lightly
It could
landed
be
on a
seen that
smooth
Kong
stone
Si
not
Ran
far away, giggling.
was not trying to take
My ring.
advantage of the situation.
The army at the south gate's
Although the
face was
competition
dark
between
as he
him and
touched
Gu
his empty
Hong
middle
had been
finger.
quite unpleasant.
When he looked up,
Kong Si
he
Ran
saw
was
that the
not a
woman was holding
narrow-minded
the ring in
person.
her hand.
His actions
and
were
waving it at
obviously
him,
for the
as
sake
if
of
she was
purple
showing
source
it
chamber
off.
of commerce.
Young Kai's
A
eyes
piece of
flashed
flashed
as a look
droppings
of
could
surprise
occasionally
appeared on
spoil
his
a
face.
pot of porridge.
Everything happened
After
too
a short
quickly.
while, Kong
Although
Si
he
Ran
didn't
returned.
see it too clearly,
As for
he
Gu
still
Hong's fate
vaguely
and
caught a
Lucci's
trace
punishment,
This
Kong Si
Emperor
Ran did
artifact
not say.
master was really
And
fast.
Yang Kai did not ask.
Even though the army at
Kong
the
Si
south
Ran
gate
only
was
expressed
prepared,
a slight apology
she still
on
managed
behalf
to
of
snatch
Lucci
away his space
and said
ring
that
in
if
an
Yang Kai
instant.
wanted to buy
Was she really
anything
an
from the
artifact
Chamber of
refiner?
Commerce in the future,
Give it back.
he would give him
The
a
army at the
10%
south gate
discount.
reached out to
Obviously,
the woman with a cold
this
face.
was Lucci's
The
hush
woman
money.
pouted her
Gu
rosy
Hong's
lips
actions were
and
a
wiped
disgrace
away
to
the
the
sole
Chamber of
imprint on the
Commerce.
south gate
So
Dajuan's
naturally,
ring.
it could
After
not be
searching
spread
for a while,
outside.
She laughed and took out a few jars of wine from the ring.
A 10% discount
she said
was
happily.
very generous.
I knew you were the best to
Especially
me.
since Yang Kai's
Saying
business
so,
with Violet
she lay
Source
down on
Chamber
her
of
side,
Commerce was
tore
extremely
open the seal,
large,
and poured
after
the
chatting
wine
for
into
a
her
while,
mouth. Yang Kai
space
said
ring,
goodbye
however,
and left.
was silently
He went
bounced
straight
back
to
to
Spirit
her.
Lake City.
The army at the
Halfway
south gate
there,
took it with
he
a
took
sullen
out the
face,
elder jade plate,
not saying a
and
word.
imprinted a message
Only the
to
sound of
Xiaosheng.
gulping wine
When
could be
Yang
heard
Kai
coming
arrived
from the
at Spirit Lake Palace.
Yang Kai rubbed his
Xiaosheng
forehead
was already
and suddenly
standing
felt
there
a
with a
headache
smile.
coming on.
When he saw Yang Kai, he waved
Before,
enthusiastically.
when he learned that this Emperor
Yang Kai
artifact
walked
master
over,
was a
and
gambling
Xiaosheng
addict.
directly put his
Yang
arm
Kai
around
did
his
not
shoulder
feel much,
and said with a
but
smile,
now that he saw her acting
Junior
like
brother
a veteran
Yang,
drunkard,
congratulations
felt
on
like
becoming
leaving.
an elder of our
Damn
temple.
it.
Another
Yang
woman
Kai
who was
said,
drinking,
"Brother, don't
Gao
laugh at me.
Xueting's actions a
How
few
is this
days
a
ago
joke?
after drinking
This is a
had
great
cast
thing
an
for you
indelible
in the
shadow
temple."
over Yang Kai's
Xiaosheng
heart.
patted him on
Now
the
that he
shoulder
saw
and
this woman
whispered,
drinking,
"I heard
he
that
could
you
not
not
help
help
but recall the
temple's
tragic
3 great
experience
taboos
of that day.
It would
His
have
heart
been
was
better if
beating like a
Xiaosheng
drum.
did not mention this.
But when Xiaosheng mentioned this,
Chapter
Yang Kai could not
2783,
help but think of
after
Gao
downing
Xueting's
several
heroic
jars of
figure.
wine,
When she was
the woman
drunk,
let out a loud
and the
burp,
corners of his mouth
with a
could not
comfortable
help but
expression.
twitch. She wiped the
Xiaosheng
wine
laughed.
from the corner of her
It's
mouth
good to get used
and let
to
out
it.
a long sigh.
It's good to get used to
I'm
it.
finally alive. The dispirited look on her face was swept away and replaced with a rosy glow. Chapter
There were still 2 jars
2789.
left.
But she
Xiaosheng
didn't
warmly
drink
welcomed
them,
Yang
and
Kai into
instead
his
put
room.
them away in her
After the
space
2
ring,
sat down,
as if they were
Yang
precious.
Kai asked about
Raising her
Bian
head,
Yuqing's
she
situation.
asked.
That
Dejun
woman are you here to
successfully
save
broke
me?
through to the Emperor
Southern
realm
Gate
half a
Dejun
month
smiled
ago.
coldly.
The commotion
What do
she
you
caused
think?
that day was
Then
not
when
small.
will our wedding be held?
Xiaosheng's
The woman
expression
asked.
turned solemn.
Scram.
Broke through
The
to
woman
the Emperor
curled her
realm,
lips and
Yang
muttered
Kai
something
raised his
under her
brow.
breath.
This news
Looking
was
at her
both
mouth,
expected and
it
unexpected.
seemed like she was cursing
Originally,
but in the blink of
according
an
to
eye,
Bian Yuqing's
she looked at
aptitude,
Yang Kai and
even
asked
if she could
Southern
enter
Gate
the
Dejun
heaven-grade
with a
secluded area of
Who
the
is this
Spirit
little
Lake
brother?
Palace,
He has
to
a good
cultivate
figure.
for 2 months.
Do you have money?
The
Do you have
possibility of
wine?
her breaking through
Don't
was
be
very small.
presumptuous.
After
Southern
all,
Gate
her
Dejun
talent in the
coldly
martial
snorted.
Dao was not
This is
very
my
good,
high heaven palace's
and she had been
palace
wasting
master.
so many
You
years
stupid
in the
woman,
Dao Source
quickly
realm.
come and greet
Her
him.
spirit had long
High
been
heaven
worn away,
palace?
and
The
she
woman
had lost
tilted
the will
her
to
head
improve
and thought for a
so
moment
how could
before
she make a
giggling.
breakthrough?
I've
If
never heard
nothing
of it.
unexpected
Where
happened,
did it come from?
the third order Dao
Southern
Source
Gate
realm would
Dejun
be the
quickly
peak of her
said.
life.
It doesn't
However,
matter whether you've
Ko
heard
Hu's
of it or
death had
not.
greatly stimulated
What's
her.
important is that
And
this
with the
king
help
is
of
now
Yang
the
Kai,
chief array master
as well
of
as
High
the
Heaven
large number
Palace.
of source
The
crystals
woman's
and emperor
cheeky
pills
grin
he had
instantly
given
froze
her
on her
before he
face,
left, as she
It
stared
was
at the
only
Southern
natural
Gate
that she
army
would
in
be able to make a
astonishment.
breakthrough.
Then glanced
In any
at Yang
case,
Kai before
this was a
stepping
happy
forward,
event,
and
and it
reaching
meant
out
that
to
the
touch
High
the
Heaven
Southern Gate
Palace
army's
had gained
head.
another Emperor
What are
realm
you doing?
master.
Southern
The
Gate
Spirit Lake
Dejun
Palace had been
vigilantly took a
established
step
for many
back.
years.
Are you sick?
And countless
The woman
cultivators
asked
had broken
curiously,
through their shackles
You're the
here,
one who's sick.
prying into
Southern
deeper
Gate
mysteries
Dejun
of the
angrily
realm.
rebuked.
But there were
Your
not
whole
many
family
who
is
broke
sick.
through to the
The
Emperor
woman
realm
giggled,
here.
turned around,
The commotion
and
caused
landed
by
on the
Bian
shiny
Yuqing's
stone.
breakthrough
Then
that
said
day shook the
condescendingly,
entire Spirit Lake
Since
City.
you're not sick,
Especially
why did
the
you join a
cultivator,
sect? Who had
Didn't
been
you
waiting
always
in
look
line
down
to
on
enter
those
the
big
Spirit
and
Lake
small
Palace
sects before?
All of them
Since
seemed to
I
have
joined
seen
High
you
Heaven
hope,
Palace,
and were full
I
of
naturally have my
enthusiasm.
reasons.
Waiting for their
Southern
turn
Gate
to enter
Dejun
the Spirit
hesitated
Lake
for a moment
Palace's
before
secluded
replying.
area to
The
cultivate.
woman's face suddenly
She has
became
been
serious.
stabilizing her
She
cultivation
had known
for the
Southern
past
Gate
half a
Dejun
month,
for many years,
so she should be
from
able
when
to
they were
come
still
out in a
weak.
few days.
They had cooperated
Xiaosheng
many
smiled
times
faintly.
and grown step
As one
by
of the
step
3
to where
great
they were
deacons
today.
of the Spirit
It
Lake
could be
Palace.
said that they knew each
He
other
naturally
very well.
knew Bian Yuqing's
She was very
situation
clear
like the
about
back
the
of his
attitude
hand.
of the Southern Gate
Not to
army
mention
towards
that
those
Bian
sects.
Yuqing was brought here
If
by
the
Yang
Southern
Kai,
Gate army wanted
so
to
he
join
would
any
more or
sect,
less take care of
it could
her.
be said that they
That's
could
good.
choose any
Yang
sect
Kai
in the
nodded
entire
happily.
star boundary.
Junior brother,
Even the sects
did
of the
anything
great
happen
emperors
recently?
were no exception.
Xiaosheng suddenly changed the topic
The
and
last
asked.
time she saw the
Yang Kai
Southgate
said,
army, he was
I
still
need
alone.
to go to Star Soul
Now,
Palace.
she suddenly
What
heard
orders
that this
does
guy
big
had
brother
joined a
have?
sect called the
Go
High
to
Heaven
Star Soul
Palace.
Palace. The woman was
Xiaosheng was
extremely
stunned
surprised.
for a moment.
Palace
But he didn't
master
ask
of
why
High Heaven
Yang Kai Kai was
palace?
going to Star
He was
Soul
just a
Palace.
First Order Emperor
After
realm
pondering
master.
for a moment, he
So
asked,
how powerful could
how
the
long
sect
will
he
it
founded
take?
be?
1 to
What was
2
so
months
special
will do.
about it?
If
That
that's
could
the
attract
case,
people like
he
the
grinned
Southern
and
Gate
said,
Army.
I want
The
to
woman
ask Junior
tilted her
brother
head
for a
and
favor.
carefully
I
examined
don't know
young
if Junior
Kai.
brother is
It
free.
was as if she wanted to
Brother,
see a
please
flower from
speak.
him.
Young
Kai's
Kai's looked back at
expression
her with a
turned
smile.
solemn.
But
Jia
deep down,
didn't
he was
say what it
worried.
was.
He thought to
Instead,
himself,
he turned to look
should
at
I
the
just
room
go
behind
back?
him.
Such
He
an
said,
unreliable
"Little
Emperor
Blossom,
artifact
come out.
master? You know Junior
Even if
brother
I did
Yang,
recruit her
so
into
don't
the High
hide
Heaven
anymore."
Palace.
As
It
soon
wouldn't
as
be a
he
good
finished
thing."
speaking,
After
a
a
young
while,
woman in a palace
the woman
dress
clenched
walked
her
out of the
fist
room.
and hammered her palm.
She was wearing a
With a
long
look of
dress that wrapped
realization,
around her
she looked
exquisite
at the
body.
Southern Gate Army
There was
in
a smile
surprise.
on her face
Did
that
June,
made people's hearts
after
ripple.
knowing each other for
Her
so
eyes
many
were
years,
watery. I
and she
finally
seemed
know
to want
that you
to
don't
say
like
something.
women. Palace
wonder you
Master
didn't want
Hua.
to marry me.
Young Kai looked at the beautiful woman.
The Southern Gate
suddenly
Army was
appeared
furious.
in surprise.
He pointed
This
at the
woman
woman
was
and
the
said
palace
with a
master
trembling
of
finger,
100 Flower Palace.
"Stupid woman,
Hua Yulu."
He turned to
He had
look
met
at the
her in
ashen-faced
Azure Sun
young
Temple
Kai
a
and
few
said
days
anxiously,
ago. He didn't
"Palace
expect to meet
Master,
her again
this
here.
woman is crazy."
That day, Hua Yulu also inquired
Don't
about
pay
Xia
attention
Sheng.
to her.
It seemed
Who
that
are
she
you
came
scolding?
directly to Spirit
The
Lake
woman
Palace.
glared at him.
After leaving
Young Kai
Azure
took a
Sun
step
Temple
forward and said
Although
indifferently,
Young Kai had noticed
"I
that
heard
there
from
was another
Dejun that
person's
Sir is a
aura in the room
top-notch
before.
emperor artifact
Since
master.
she was hiding,
This
he
young
didn't
master
investigate
came with great
further.
sincerity and
Now that he saw the real
expectations,
person,
but
he
now
was
it
shocked.
seems TSK.
He couldn't help but be surprised.
What do you mean by TSK? The woman was unhappy. There seemed
She
to be
rushed
some
in front of
adultery
Young Kai
between
and
this
glared
man
at
and
him.
woman. She
Young
reached
Kai's
out and grabbed
expression
Young
suddenly
Kai's
became
collar and said
meaningful.
angrily,
Hua Yulu seemed a
"Explain
little
yourself,
embarrassed,
or you'll get
her
it."
cheeks blushing
Let
slightly.
go. The
She
Southern
walked
Gate
closer
Army
and
bowed
startled
softly,
and quickly
saying,
shouted.
"This
He
concubine
wasn't
greets
worried
Elder
about
Young
Young.
Kai."
Palace
just
Master
afraid
Hua
that
is
Young
too
Kai would
polite.
be angry.
Young
and
Kai
the woman
hurriedly
wouldn't
raised
have a
his
good
head.
time.
Not
They
to
were
mention
both
that
First
Hua
Order
Yulu's
Emperor realm
cultivation was
masters.
similar to his.
So even if the
And
woman
she
was
was a
strong,
palace master.
she was
Just
definitely
based
not
on
Young
the
Kai's
unclear
opponent.
relationship between
Young
her
Kai
and
raised
Xia
his
Sheng
hand to stop him.
Young Kai couldn't
and looked
accept
at
her
the woman with
courtesy.
disdain.
Young Kai
He
turned to
sneered.
look at Xia
"Since
Sheng
you are
and
a
said,
grandmaster,
Brother,
you should act like
you
one.
said you wanted my
I
help.
don't see a trace
Is
of
it
a
related to
grandmaster's
Palace
demeanor
Master
on
Hua?
you."
Instead,
Xia Sheng
you look
smiled
like a
slightly.
common woman.
Yes.
To be honest,
It is indeed
this
related
young
to
master
Little
is
Hua.
very disappointed.
He looked up at Hua Yulu
The woman
and said,
let go of his
"Little
collar
Hua,
and sneered.
You tell me
What
yourself.
a joke.
Why
Do you
Yulu
think that a
nodded
so-called
slightly and opened her red
grandmaster
lips
must be
slowly,
stemmonious
saying,
and serious?
"It's like this
old
3
lady
months
was
ago.
born like this.
When I went to the southern
Young
swamp
Kai
to look for
chuckled.
herbs.
So you think
I
you are a
accidentally
grandmaster?
found an ancient cave
The woman
mansion.
coldly snorted.
An ancient cave mansion.
I don't dare to say anything
Young Kai
else.
was surprised
But when
when
it
he
comes
heard
to
this.
artifact refining,
No one
Hua
can
Yulu
surpass
nodded.
me in this world.
It is indeed an
Such
ancient
big
cave
words.
mansion.
Be careful
That
not
cave
to bite
mansion
your
has been
tongue.
around for a
The
long
woman
time.
sneered,
and
her
it exudes
confidence
an
overflowing
extremely
in her
ancient
words.
aura.
I don't
Anyone
know
can
who left
talk,
it behind,
but I don't know
this
what will happen
concubine
when it
and
comes
2
to
other people
fighting.
took the risk.
You want to fight
and went in to
The woman
investigate.
glared at Young Kai.
Although we tried our
Seeing
best
his
to break through a
provocative
few
look,
layers of
she
old
immediately
restrictions
became angry
and
and
obtained
said,
some benefits.
Good.
In the end,
Elder sister
we
will
were
let you
stopped
die
in
with
front of an
understanding.
even more powerful
She
restriction.
stretched out her hand
We couldn't
and said
enter
to
the Southern Gate
Why
Army.
are there 2 other people?
Bring some materials.
Young Kai frowned.
The Southern
Hua
Gate
Yulu
Army
said,
glanced at Young Kai
although the southern
inquiringly.
swamp is full
At
of
this
dangers,
time, he
there are
also
also many
understood what Young Kai
opportunities.
was planning.
It is said that
He
the southern
obviously wanted
swamp
to
is
see
the
the
place
woman's
where the
artifact
ancient
refining
cultivator
skills
rose and gathered.
So his words
So
were
there
so
are many
vicious.
good things hidden
The
there.
woman did not
Moreover,
fail to see Young
the
Kai's
special
intentions.
environment,
There
but
can
being
also
questioned
produced
in
some
her own
peerless
territory.
spirit herbs.
She was
Many
naturally
experts
angry.
will explore
Knowing
the
that
southern
Young
swamp.
Kai was using
When
words
that ancient
to provoke
cave
her,
mansion appeared,
she could only go with
there
the
was a
flow.
small commotion.
Seeing Young Kai
If it
nod in
wasn't for
agreement,
that, the Southern
this
Gate
concubine
Army
wouldn't
asked,
have discovered
"What
it.
materials do
The
you
other
want?"
2 people were also
Anything.
attracted.
Only then did
Young Kai
Southgate
nodded
Dejun
after
start
hearing
searching
this,
through his space
vaguely
ring.
understanding
During
the
this
situation
period
at
of
that
time,
As the
Hua
chief
Yulu
array
continued.
master of Towering
Among
Palace,
the other 2 people,
he had been busy
one
with
of them
the
knew a
matters
little
of array
about
formations.
restrictions and formations.
Setting up array formations
According to that
required a
person's
large amount of
speculation,
materials.
The restriction
So there
that
was a lot
blocked
of
our way
materials
couldn't be
in his
broken
space
through,
ring,
even if the 3
finding
of us
none or
worked
the
together.
size of a human head.
So we could only
He threw it
seek
to the
help
woman.
from others.
Young Kai
Therefore,
glanced at it.
the 3
and
of us
recognized
agreed
that
to
it
find
was
a
a
piece
helper
of red
each
feather
and meet
corundum,
in the southern
which was
swamp
famous
half
for
a year
its
later.
toughness. And you found Brother Xia
When refining
Young
an
Kai
artifact,
asked,
if
Hua
mixed
Yulu
with it,
smiled bitterly.
it could improve the
Although
toughness
this
of the
concubine
artifact.
knows many people in
However,
the Emperor
because
realm,
of this red
there are
feather
not many
corundum
that I
could
can
only
truly
be used
trust.
as an additive material.
It was not uncommon for
not
a
as the main
cultivator
body
to
of an
forget
artifact,
righteousness in the
but
face
now
of
that the
profit
Southern Gate Army
and
had
kill
chosen
others
such
to
a
steal
piece
their
of ore
treasures
and
on the
no
path
other
of
materials.
cultivation. Obviously, he also intended to let the woman show off her
When it came
skills.
to finding people
Open
to
your eyes and look
cooperate in an
carefully, little
exploration,
brother,
and don't
it was
blink.
natural to find
The woman
people
took
that were
the red feather
trustworthy.
corundum.
Otherwise,
and
if
smiled
they randomly
coldly at Young
found
Kai,
someone,
her
they might
5
die an
fingers
unnatural
danced
death.
flexibly.
Xia
And the
Sheng
head-sized
said,
red
"Junior
feather
brother
corundum
Yang
rotated
this
in
brother
her hand
really
in
can't
an
leave."
instant.
The temple
The woman
sent
did
me
not
here
rush
for a
to
full
refine,
3 years.
but instead
Before
took out
the
a jar of wine and drank a big mouthful. Otherwise, after putting away the wine jar, need to trouble the woman opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of wine. We're just going to explore an ancient cave mansion. A burst of fire burst out, his hand and the temperature in the cave rose sharply. Are you familiar with the other two? Color? Can you trust them? It should be a special kind of heaven and earth flame. I'm not familiar with them. This made young Kai's eyes light up. Whether it was an artifact refiner or alchemist, The
As for whether I
requirements for
trust them
flames
or
were
not,
extremely high.
since it was the first
Having an
time we
excellent
met,
flame could
how could I
often
trust
improve
them?
the efficiency
However,
and quality of
I don't
alchemy
trust
and
them,
artifact
and they
refining.
certainly won't
When
trust
the woman
me.
made this
So
move,
when we separated,
young Kai could see
the
that
three
she
of us
must be
each
really
made a
skilled.
great heart demon
Not
oath,
to mention that she didn't
swearing
even
not
take
to
out an
casually
artifact
reveal the
refining
matter of
furnace.
this ancient cave
Obviously,
mansion.
she was going
We
to
were only
refine
allowed
in the
to
air.
find helpers
This
below
kind of
the second
refinement
order
had
emperor
extremely
realm,
high
and
requirements
each of
for
us
the
could only
refiner.
bring one helper.
Ordinary people simply
So it's
could
like
not do
that.
it.
Young
What
Kai
surprised
rubbed his
young
chin
Kai
and pondered,
even more,
although
was that
great
the
heart
woman's
demon
control
oaths
over
were just
this
empty
flame
words
had reached a
when one's
transcendent
cultivation
level.
reached the
The
level of
spirit
the
wine
emperor
flame
realm.
directly wrapped
This
around
kind of
Qi
oath
Gang
could not be
stone.
made casually.
Not a bit more.
Once broken,
Not a bit less.
a heart
Not a
demon
bit
might
more.
appear and affect
Not a
one's
bit more.
future.
Not a bit
Since
more.
they were bound by
In the
great
high
heart
temperature,
demon oaths,
the head
for the
sized
time
red
being,
feather corundum
they
stone
could trust
melted
that the
quickly.
other two would
The
not
woman held
casually
it with
leak
one
the
of her
information.
jade-like hands.
This matter
and her
was still
5
a possibility.
moved nimbly.
If I'm not
Drops
wrong,
of impurities
those
were
two will
removed,
definitely find
and the red
helpers
feather
at the
corundum
second order
stone
emperor
continued
realm.
to shrink.
Hua Yulu
Just like
looked
when
at young
refining
Kai with a
pills,
burning gaze
one
and
had to
said,
condense the
if
medicinal
Elder Young
liquid.
has any scruples,
When refining
this
tools,
mistress will
one
think
had
of
to
another
first
way.
remove the impurities.
It wasn't that she couldn't
This was
find
the most
helpers
basic
at the
step,
second order emperor
and also
realm,
the step that
but they
tested
really
the skills
couldn't
of
cooperate.
alchemists and tool
Otherwise,
refiners
she
the
wouldn't
most.
have found Xia
It would
Sheng.
directly affect the
Xia Sheng
quality
was
of
the
the
chief
final
disciple
product.
of Azure Sun
Young
Temple
Kai
before the
released his
emperor
divine
realm.
sense.
Although
And
he had just
carefully
reached
examined
the
the
first order
situation
emperor
of
realm,
Akabane Adamantium.
if he really went
The
all
result
out,
was astonishing.
it wouldn't be easy
After
for a
spending
second
about
order
the time
emperor
it
realm
took for an
master to kill
incense
him.
stick to burn.
As for young
The
Kai's
woman
strength,
actually removed
Hua
all
Yulu
the
had seen it
impurities
with her
from
own
the red
eyes on
feather
the day of the
adamantium
coronation
stone,
ceremony,
leaving not a
he could
trace
even
behind.
injure an elder of
In
Star
this
Soul
segment,
Palace.
she had already
Although
achieved
she was also
perfection.
heavily injured,
Just this alone
her
showed
strength
that
was
she was worthy
definitely
of the
not
title of
simply at the first
Grandmaster.
order emperor
Young
realm.
Kai showed a look
She
of
should be on
approval
par with Xia
because
Sheng.
of the various
Xia
actions
Sheng
of
said
this
from
woman.
the side.
His
Junior
prejudice
brother,
against her was
you
slightly
can consider
reduced.
this matter yourself.
As long as she had real
Don't worry
skills.
about me. Some of
I
the
just
problems
mentioned
in
it
life
casually.
were not unbearable.
It's up to you whether
After
you agree
an
or
incense
not.
stick worth of time,
He was obviously
the
afraid that
head-sized
young
red
Kai
feather
would be worried
stone
about his face
had turned
and
into a ball
reluctantly
of
agreed.
pure mineral
Young
liquid
Kai
the size
smiled
of a
and
fist.
said,
The
I am
woman
also
raised
very
her head
interested in
and
the
looked at
ancient
young
cave
Kai
mansion.
triumphantly.
Hua Yulu's
Little
beautiful
brother,
eyes lit up
it's
and
not
she
too
said,
late to beg for
Does
mercy.
that mean Elder Young
As long
agrees?
as you can give me
Young
a
Kai
few
didn't
million
answer,
source crystals,
but said,
this elder
that ancient
sister will
cave
be
mansion
merciful
can make
enough
the
to
three of
forgive
you
you
so
for your
obsessed.
previous rudeness.
And you even went through so much trouble to
Young
find
Kai
helpers to
sneered.
explore it.
You won't shed tears
Presumably,
until you see the
obtain
coffin.
some benefits from
I
it.
hate stubborn men like
There are
you the
indeed
most.
benefits.
The woman
Hua
grit
Yulu
her
nodded
teeth as she
calmly.
spoke to young
Even
Kai,
if Elder Young
her
didn't
hands
ask,
not stopping
this
for a
mistress
moment.
was prepared
The
to
fingers
explain
of her
it.
small hand
The three
that
of
was
you
holding
didn't
the mineral
explore the
liquid
ancient
continued
cave
to
mansion
move,
deeply,
forming a
although we
series
broke
of
a few
seals
barriers
and
we
branding
only
them
obtained
into
a
the
few
mineral
benefits.
liquids.
At the
This is
same
the
time,
benefit this
the
mistress
white flame in
obtained
her
from the
hand
cave
also
mansion.
fluctuated between
While
high and
speaking,
low.
Hua Yulu
Obviously
flipped her
trying to
hand and
control
took
the
out a
temperature
small
of the
flower
flame.
drum. The small flower drum didn't look
At a
special,
speed visible
only
to the
about the
naked
size
eye.
of a person's
The mineral
palm.
liquid was
It was
slowly
unknown what it
elongated,
was made of,
gradually
but as
taking
soon
the
as it was
shape of a
taken
sword.
out, a very
With the
special
passage of
aura
time
rippled
and the
out.
woman's movements,
Young Kai's eyes
the
narrowed.
appearance of the long
Ancient
sword
exotic
became
treasure.
clearer and clearer.
This flower drum
The
was
edge of the
actually
sword
just like his
flashed with a
mountains
sharp
and
cold
rivers
light,
bell, and a complex pattern appeared on the hilt. This
It was a
refining
genuine
process
primeval
was a bit
treasure
boring,
that
and there was
emanated
no
a pure
particularly
primeval
thrilling
aura.
scene.
In ancient
But whether
times,
it was young Kai
the
or
world
the
energy
Southgate
army
army
was very
they
different
all
from the
watched
present.
intently. So the
About
various
an hour
secret
later,
techniques
the
and
woman
divine
suddenly
abilities
grabbed the wine jar
cultivated
again
by the
and drank
ancient
a mouthful
cultivators.
of wine.
And
At
even
the
the
same
artifacts
time,
they used
the
were
strange
very
flame
different from
suddenly
those of this
disappeared.
era.
But it was
Accompanied by a
undeniable
sizzling
that
sound,
ancient exotic
and
treasures
bursts of
should
light
not be
appeared on the long
underestimated.
sword.
It was
Finished.
just that ancient
The woman
exotic
threw the
treasures
long
were
sword
too
into
rare.
the air.
For nearly
And after it fell
10,000
straight
years,
down,
only
it
the
was
mountains
firmly
and rivers
inserted in the
bell
ground
seemed to be recorded.
more than a foot into
Perhaps
the
there were
ground.
other unknown ancient exotic treasures. But in the entire star boundary,
Chapter
there were definitely no
2784,
more than 10.
The ground of
now
this
one
cave
had
was
appeared in
extremely
Hua
hard,
Yulu's hands.
but now,
The red feather steel sword was able to sink a foot into the ground, due to the inertia of falling from the air.
Chapter 2790.
Which was enough to show how
This
sharp this sword
soul-absorbing
was.
drum can intimidate
What was
the
even
mind.
more remarkable
It's not very
was that
powerful,
this sword was
but
refined
it's
from
good
a
in
piece of
concealment,
red feather steel
making it
stone,
impossible
without
to
any
guard
other
against.
materials.
As
So although
Huayu's
its toughness was good,
she suddenly reached
it was
out
definitely
and patted
not
the small
known for its
flower drum
sharpness.
lightly.
This point
Strangely
alone
enough,
allowed Yang
there was
Kai
no sound
to have
at
a
all.
general
At the
evaluation
same
of this
time,
woman's
a
artifact
silent
refining
force rippled
skills.
outwards.
Reaching
Like a
out,
sharp blade
the
cutting
scarlet
towards
feather
Yang
steel
Kai's
sword
knowledge
landed
sea.
firmly in
Caught
Yang
off
Kai's
guard,
palm.
Yang
When
Kai's
Yang
mind
Kai
moved.
pushed his emperor
However,
chi,
as Huayu
the sword
said,
hummed and vibrated.
this soul-absorbing
With the
drum
shake of his
wasn't very
hand,
powerful.
The long sword
So it
actually
couldn't
formed
break
a
through the
wave-like
defense of his
trajectory,
knowledge sea.
as soft as a
Of
rope.
course, This was also related to the fact that Kai raised his brow slightly, refined it, and didn't fully activate on top of the rock. Even so, opened her arms very impressive. And laughed wildly. Imagine, all of you will submit to this evenly matched in magical and great and were fighting to the death skills. Hua Yulu suddenly activated the power of the soul-absorbing palace master, and her opponent would definitely suffer. If the soul-absorbing drum was used such a suggestion before this woman began her artifact could turn defeat into victory. Young Kai might have just more versatile than an ordinary emperor artifact. But after seeing this woman's artifact refining skills, Young Kai personally tested the power of the soul-absorbing drum in front of him looked extremely unreliable. She was very capable. Elder Yang, you flatter me. She wasn't just an ordinary person. When the three of you went to explore, are you convinced you got the soul-absorbing drum? The woman looked at Young Kai triumphantly. With a look of worship on her face. One of them cultivated a secret technique in the cave mansion. Not bad. This mistress doesn't know what it is exactly, as she said that person didn't show it. Not wrong, but judging from his miraculous method was actually exchanged for a mere not bad evaluation. The other person's cultivation increased greatly and waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. That person's strength was the lowest among the three of us. Get as far away as you can. He should have just broken through to the First Order Emperor realm not long ago. Was a guest brought by the Southern Gate Army. His aura was already the strongest among the three of us. Otherwise, she would not have deliberately shown her artifact refining skills. Young Kai was shocked. But now, it was rare to see an opportunity that could make one's cultivation soar in the Emperor realm. So she directly tried to drive him away. That this ancient she no longer had the slightest interest in talking to him. The methods of the ancient almighty were really didn't know how to appreciate. After so many years, there were still so many opportunities hidden in that cave mansion. The woman's expression turned cold. If they really explored it completely, and she said indifferently, who knew how many benefits they would gain. Be careful that trouble comes from when he agreed to accompany Hua Yulu to explore the ancient cave. I only need to say a word. It was more or less out of respect without a burial ground. However, at this moment, Southgate Daju chuckled truly and said, interested. Little Marquis, a cultivator's cultivation was not a closed door. Be careful that you won't be able to clean up the mess was the most important path. The woman snorted. Occasionally obtaining an opportunity was I really wanted to kill someone in seclusion. Would I be afraid that no one would do it for me? Since Elder Young is interested, look at how those fellows outside are jealous of this old lady's debt collection. If this old lady really wants to negotiate with them, all right, they can all become hired thugs. Young Kai nodded. Naturally, not having any objections, said indifferently, he would take advantage of this time to go to Star Soul Palace. The woman looked at Young Kai in treasure pagoda to cultivate, then tilted her head to look at Southgate. The two of them immediately exchanged contact information, as if she could see traces of lying on his face, their divine soul but the result made her extremely disappointed. In this way, Southgate as long as they were not too far apart, and his expression was solemn with each other. Furthermore, then based on her understanding when the time of the Southgate Army, I'll need you to take care of Little Blossom like junior brother. Pill Emperor Xiaxing smiled. So Young Kai was a little frightened. Brother, however, don't worry. Still stubbornly I will said, definitely bring so Palace Master Hua back in one piece. Emperor Pill Emperor. Xiaxing smiled. Everyone and declined is about to comment. Same. On the other hand, about it was funny. Cheeks this nameless red. Island actually gathered an Emperor Weaponsmith, and immediately showed a disappointed expression. And an Emperor Ray Emperor. Looking at the expressions of these two people, said to be terrifying. Kai Young vaguely understood the relationship between these two people. Any sect that saw this would have their eyes lit up for the next few days, and would try to rope them in at all costs. If comes out of seclusion, Young Kai said, "Please let me know, brother." Right? It seems that Grandmaster Ho is very dissatisfied with this young master's evaluation. Seriously, the woman snorted from time to time. Whatever. I'm not related to you in any way. But when you evaluate is your own business. He suddenly turned back and said, "If this young master says it's not bad, by the way, Palace Master Hua, that's because I've seen better weaponsmiths. Do you remember the barrier that blocked your way?" As soon as these words came out, the woman immediately jumped up and cursed. "I remember. Nonsense. Does Elder Young How can there be a better weaponsmith in this world than this old lady? That would be best. In the Tao of weaponsmithing, immediately took out a blank jade number one in the world, immersed her divine sense in it, glare at Southgate and recorded the brand she saw that day. She handed it to Young Kai and said, Southgate Great Army shook his head and said, "It should be an ancient spirit array. In any territory, doesn't understand no one spirit array to be number one in the world. Anything special Perhaps about it. The wondrous pill Great Empress could boast there so much in the Tao of alchemy. But at her level of cultivation, did not have having a photographic memory. You don't believe was me, the most basic ability. Young Kai's mouth I don't understand it either, revealing a subtle but I can smile. Ask someone else. The woman snorted. Young Kai smiled slightly. Since you say so, why you lose then eyes take lit me up. To find a better Elder Young knows someone who is proficient wants to see who's stronger and that would be best. Young Kai shook his head planning to go to the Gong family I don't know where she is Heavenly River Valley. The woman curled her lips with a look of disdain.
obviously
the Gong
thinking
family
that
in
Yang
Heavenly
Kai
River
was
Valley
talking
was
nonsense.
recognized
As a master of spirit
Yang Kai
arrays
changed
in
the
the southern
topic.
territory.
If I can prove that there is not
someone
an
in this
ignorant
world
person
who is better than
so
you
she
in
naturally
weaponsmithing,
couldn't completely
then
trust
what?
the other two emperors.
What's the harm in marrying
If she
you?
wanted to break
The woman
spirit
sneered
array
as she tugged at her
and enter
floral
the
dress,
depths of the
puffed
ancient
out her
cave
chest,
mansion,
and said,
she naturally had to investigate
this
this
spirit
and
array.
figure.
Even
the Gong
now,
family in
I am
Heavenly
still a
River
virgin,
Valley was the
so
best
don't
choice.
say you don't like me.
However, with Yang
Kai's
Kai's
words,
glanced at
she
Southgate
saved herself
Great
some
Army,
trouble.
who stretched
After
out his
all,
hand,
if she
and
went
put
to
a Heavenly
helpless
River
expression
Valley
on his face,
and the Gong family
obviously,
asked about
he
the
had long
origin of
since
this
learned
spirit
about
array.
this woman's
Hua
shamelessness.
Yulu could only lie.
Good. Leave
Yang
this
Kai
matter
nodded
to me.
before taking
Palace
out an object
Master
from
Hua.
his space ring
Recuperate
and
for
tossing
the
it
next
to
2
the
months.
woman. When the
Then
time
please
comes,
take a look at this.
we will meet again
Grandmaster
in the
Ho.
southern swamp. The woman reached
Thank
out
you
and
for your
caught
trouble,
it, glanced
Elder
over
Yuan.
it, and
Hua
sneered
Yulu nodded and
disdainfully.
thanked him.
An origin
As soon
great
as Yang
artifact?
Kai left,
Where did this toy come
stood up
from?
and said,
Oh, it's a
Little
battleship.
Hua,
You can do
an
as
origin
you please.
great artifact
I'm going
was
out for a
something
while.
only an origin
Where are
returning
you going?
rowing
Cultivator
Hua
could
Yulu
use.
looked at him angrily.
For someone at her level,
Why are you in such
it
a
was
hurry
indeed
to
a
leave?
toy that had no
Are you
use
afraid
at all.
that I will eat you?
Yang Kai smiled
The corner
lightly
of
and
Xia
said,
Sheng's mouth
the
twitched,
simpler and lower
and
the
he
grade
said,
of an object,
why would I be
the
afraid
better
of
one's
you?
ability to
It's
refine
just that
it.
if I don't
Isn't
work
that
hard
so?
to cultivate,
The woman frowned
I'm afraid
slightly,
that I won't be able to
agreeing
keep
with
my
Yang
position
Kai's point
as
of
the
view in a
eldest
rare
brother.
moment.
You're
With
right.
his hands behind his
Just
back,
like cooking,
he shook his
what
head and
tested
walked
a
out.
chef's foundation
In the
was
blink
not
of
some
an eye,
expensive
he
dish,
disappeared.
but the simplest
Stinky man.
stir-fried potato
Hua
shreds.
Yulu puffed up her cheeks in
HM?
anger.
The
Her
woman's
face
full
full
of
of indignation
indignation
suddenly became serious.
The host had already left,
and the contempt in
so
her
as a
eyes
guest,
disappeared.
what was the point of her
Replaced by
staying?
caution and
She
surprise.
could only
follow him and leave, leaving behind a lingering
She
fragrance.
turned the small battleship over and over in her hand,
Spirit Lake
her
City
divine
for less
sense
than 3
surging.
days when
Apparently
Bian
to investigate
who was
its
emitting a
internal
strong
structure,
aura, came
Palace
knocking on
Master.
his door. Do you really intend to recruit this woman into High Heaven Palace? In the room,
Southgate
pairs
Great
of eyes
Army
met,
quietly asked,
and Yang Kai nodded
You've
lightly.
seen what kind of
Not
virtue
bad.
she has.
Bian Yuqing
If she really
stroked her hair
enters
behind
High
her
Heaven
ear and
Palace,
smiled bitterly.
who knows what kind of trouble
It's all
she'll
thanks
cause.
to your help. She's
Otherwise,
eccentric
I wouldn't be
and
where
does
I am
whatever
today.
she wants.
Bian
It's
Yuqing
just
was
that
also
she hasn't
shocked.
met anyone
She
who
thought
can
that
subdue
after
her.
breaking through
Is
to the
Palace
Emperor
Master
realm,
confident
she
in
wouldn't
subduing
feel any
her?
pressure when
No.
facing Yang Kai.
Yang Kai shook his
But
head.
after meeting him this
If
time,
I want to subdue
she
her,
was shocked to
the
find
only
that she
way is to
couldn't
defeat
see
her
through
in
his
her
depths.
territory. If she
I
didn't
don't have
know
that
that he was
ability.
also a First Order
In
Emperor
this
realm
regard,
master,
Southgate Great
Bian
Army
Yuqing
deeply
would have
understood
suspected that he was
the
a
reason
Third
why
Order
he
master
agreed to join High
Why
Heaven
is the gap
Palace
still so
was
big?
not because
You
Yang
can
Kai was
release it,
sincere,
but you can't
nor
retract
was
it
it
because Yang
you
Kai
haven't
was good
yet
to him.
reached a stable realm.
But because there was
Yang
something
Kai
in High Heaven
commented,
Palace
only
that
when
interested
him in
his
his aura
territory
can you be
that he could
considered
not
to have
decipher.
completely
This
stabilized.
was the main reason. I will remember.
Although I don't have
Thank
this
you for your
ability,
guidance,
others do.
Palace Master.
Yang Kai showed
Bian
a
Yuqing
mysterious
responded
smile.
honestly. This is an
But she
origin
couldn't
great
help
ship.
but feel a little
Southgate
strange.
Great Army
More than a
frowned,
decade ago,
realizing the
she
crux
was
of
high
the
and
problem.
mighty in front of
Yang
this
Kai
young
grinned
man.
meaningfully,
But after
and
more
no
than a
longer
decade,
said anything.
the roles
An
were
origin
suddenly
great
reversed.
ship for
It
Yang
was all
Kai
thanks to this
was
person
far
that
too
she
low
could
of a
survive
grade,
and break
but it was
through
a
to the
battleship
Emperor realm.
personally refined
Thinking
by
back
Yang
on the
information.
past,
She couldn't help
something
but
Yang
sigh.
Kai had brought
Yang
from
Kai
Shadowed
smiled
Star.
slightly. Yang
It seems that
inflammations
you are ready
artifact
to join
refining
my High Heaven
skills
Palace.
were something Yang Kai
Bian
had
Yuqing
deeply
smiled.
experienced.
Does Palace
If
Master
this
not want
Grandmaster
me?
Ho's artifact
Of course
refining
not.
skills were
Yang
even
Kai
better
got
than
up and
Yang
said,
inflammations,
"Let's go."
then Yang
After
Kai would
leaving
naturally
Spirit Lake
have
City
nothing to
and
say.
flying forward.
However, Bian
Yang
Yuqing
Kai felt
constantly
that this was
stabilized her
unlikely.
newly broken
This could
through
be seen from
cultivation.
the dignified
After 2
expression
days
on the
this,
woman's
the
face
results
at the
were
moment.
very obvious. The
The
layman enjoyed
aura
the
from
show,
the Emperor
while
realm
the
was
expert
obviously much
appreciated
more
the skill.
restrained.
A trivial
Palace
origin
Master,
grade ship.
where are we going
In
now?
the eyes of Yang
Bian
Kai and
Yuqing
Southgate
couldn't help
Great
but
Army
ask
when she saw
was
Yang
just a
Kai's
low-grade
leisurely
artifact.
appearance. But in the
I'll
eyes of
send
this
you back
woman,
to the High
it
Heaven
was an
Palace.
extremely
Yang
exquisite
Kai
artifact.
replied.
Back
Time
to the
passed
palace.
slowly,
And
and
the
the
cave
cave
remained
remained
startled
silent.
and asked in
The
surprise.
woman's expression
But
became
isn't the
more
High
and more
Heaven
dignified.
Palace in the northern
A
territory?
fine layer of sweat
The
oozing
northern
from her
territory
forehead,
and the
this
southern
detailed shocked and horrified hundreds of millions of kilometers away. The woman's reaction was obviously all the way there because this origin great ship had given her a great shock. If there were any delays along the way, Army did not acknowledge her claim to be the world's #1 artifact refiner. Yan Yuqing wanted to persuade Yang Kai that in terms of artifact refining, the space array there was basically no one in the entire star boundary some time who could match her. But seeing that Yang Kai had no intention of doing so, there was always a mountain higher than the other. In any case, who had refined now joined the High Heaven Palace, and where had the palace master do whatever he wanted. How could it have such a magical for him to worry about? And he had even saved her life. Suddenly raised her head and ordered Yang Kai. The two arrived at a desolate and dilapidated place. Yang Kai didn't pay her any mind. This should be the thousand seal with his hand. Causing the palm-sized battleship to immediately swell up to 15 meters. She then turned her head to look around and asked, "It is indeed opened the hatch again, and the woman entered the battleship in a flash. The rise and fall of a sect is like the tide. She would need to carefully inspect the ship from inside out. She seemed to have some thoughts. Was not in a hurry, looking at the destroyed waited outside with the Southgate Great Army. She couldn't help but think of Blue Feather sect. Yongkai was already 80% sure that this was the case. So it all depended on whether the woman admitted it or not. While she was lost in thought, the woman Yongkai had already out of the battleship array in the mountain valley and called out. She was like a walking corpse, found it strange, like a young girl who had been brutally ravaged by dozens of burly men. In the next moment, even her footsteps were stiff and mechanical. Yongkai didn't say beautiful eyes flickered with a strange light straight to Emperor Heaven Valley. Opened and closed. After Bien Yuqing saw the territory crossing space array, Yongkai and the Southgate Great Army glanced at each other in horror and tactfully chose not to disturb her. Yongkai said, "You can return to the High Heaven Palace half a day, one night. I have 3 jade slips for you to take back." The woman suddenly changed. Her eyes became brighter and brighter as she suddenly collected her thoughts and took the 3 jade slips, asking, "I understand. Who should I give them to?" That's how it is. Yongkai said she had actually gained one to a person called Hua Qingxi. The Southgate Great Army steward of the High Heaven Palace. And 2 days in charge of all affairs very worried. Although after so many years of being together, and she will arrange it for you. This woman had often done some infuriating things. Let Hua Qingxi in the end pass them to the Southgate Army. Do you remember this woman's demonic appearance? Nodded seriously. The Southgate Great Army was really worried that she would become the demon race. His hand. But now, Yuqing walked onto the array and stood there for nothing. Yongkai's hand moved and many high-rank source crystals were accurately inserted into the grooves. They also felt a little angry. His space principles, good people don't live long. The array hummed and activated, but scourges live for thousands of years. With this woman's previous actions, vaguely, it was likely that she would live as long as the heavens opened and closed, shining as brightly as the sun and moon. Yongkai smiled and turned around to leave Emperor Heaven Valley. Destination: Star Soul Palace. Chapter 2791. There were not many great emperor sects in the star boundary, at most 3. The Serene Soul Palace of the Great Emperors in the Eastern Territory, the Star Soul Palace of the Bright Moon Great Emperors in the Southern Territory, and the Shadow Killer Temple of the Night Shadow Great Emperors in the Western Territory. Of course, Medicine Pill Valley and Spirit Beast Island were also considered forces of the Great Emperors, but they were not considered sects. After all, they did not recruit disciples. Whether it was Medicine Pill Valley or Spirit Beast Island, they were just places where the 2 great emperors lived in seclusion. Ordinary people had no chance of entering, and any of the great emperor's sects were the stabilizing force of the territory where the sect was located, the god of protection, awe-inspiring and inviolable. As the overlord sect of the Southern Territory, Star Soul Palace had played such a role for tens of thousands of years, making hundreds of millions of cultivators in the Southern Territory worship it. For tens of thousands of years, the source chi of all living beings had gathered, and the existence of Star Soul Palace was closely related to the fate of the entire Southern Territory. Someone once said that if Star Soul Palace was destroyed one day, the entire Southern Territory would be plunged into an abyss of suffering beyond redemption. However, with the Bright Moon Great Emperors in charge, it would not be easy to destroy Star Soul Palace, unless there was another turbulence like the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's era. When Yongkai arrived at Star Moon Mountain, it was already 7 days later. Star Moon Mountain was extremely high, towering and precipitous, as if it was connected to the 9 heavens. One could pluck the sun and moon with one hand, and cover the stars with a flip of the hand. A thick and vicissitudes of life rushed towards him, as if what in front of him was not a mountain range, but a living giant that had stood in the Southern Territory for tens of thousands of years, overlooking the rise and fall of the common people. Yongkai was knowledgeable and experienced, and had seen a lot of great sects. Not to mention a top sect like Azure Sun Temple, even Ice Heart Valley and Seeking Passion sect were on par with it, but no sect could compare to Star Soul Palace. Standing here, it was as if one's entire being had obtained an indescribable sublimation, and it gave birth to an extremely subtle feeling of excitement and delight. In the mountains and fields, rare birds and beasts were frolicking about. Hidden in the clouds and mist, pavilions and buildings were faintly discernible. It was a scene of paradise that was too beautiful to behold. It was so enjoyable that one would forget to leave, This is the sect of the great emperors? Yang Kai murmured. Who is it? Yang Kai had only been standing there for a short while when he heard an angry shout. Two streams of light flew over from afar and turned into two figures. Both of them were young men, and their Dao Source Realm auras were vigorous and pure. At a glance, one could tell that they had a solid foundation and a promising future ahead of them. It was very likely that he would break through the shackles of the Emperor Realm and become a master of his generation. Such an outstanding cultivator, if placed in any sect, would be fully nurtured as a successor. But looking at the appearance of these two people, it seemed that they were just guarding the mountain. Yang Kai couldn't help but sigh. Star Soul Palace was indeed Star Soul Palace. Only the Serene Soul Palace and Shadow Kill Palace, which were also great emperor sects, could compare with them. This is Star Moon Mountain. Idle people are not allowed to trespass. Go back to where you came from, or we will not let you off easily. Among the two Dao Source Realm cultivators, the one on the left, who looked more stable, shouted at Yang Kai. Although his cultivation was much lower than Yang Kai's, he didn't fear either of them. But whether it was him or the other person, neither of them showed the slightest fear, instead shouting at Kai Yang. This was the confidence of the disciples of Star Soul Palace. In the eyes of the disciples of Star Soul Palace, there were only two kinds of cultivator in the entire Southern Territory. One was from the same sect, and the other was not. Yang Kai was undoubtedly the latter. So no matter how high or low his cultivation was, they didn't need to care too much. Glancing at the two people, Yang Kai cupped his fists and said, "This one was invited by someone and came to keep an appointment. Please don't be impatient." Invited by someone? The young man who spoke before frowned. Looking at Yang Kai suspiciously, he said, "Who invited you? Do you know your name? My brother will pass the message for you." Since this person in front of him was invited, it meant that he had some relationship with his fellow sect members. It wasn't good to offend him easily, so his tone softened a little. Yang Kai was about to tell the truth, but suddenly his expression changed and he smiled. "No need. Someone is here to pick me up." When the two brothers heard this, they both turned their heads to look. They saw a colorful light approaching from afar. It came quickly and stopped not far away in the blink of an eye. The light dissipated, revealing a beautiful figure. "Brother Yang," Lan Sun greeted with a smile. In an instant, the whole world seemed to have lost its color. Your Highness the Princess?" The two senior and junior brothers were dumbfounded in an instant as they stared at Lan Sun, who had suddenly appeared, their eyes almost frozen. Originally, when they heard Yang Kai say that he was invited by someone, the two didn't care too much. It was nothing more than an outsider who had some relationship with their fellow sect members. But now it seemed that the person who invited him was actually the princess of Star Soul Palace. How could it be Her Highness the Princess? Her Highness the Princess was outstanding. Not only did she inherit the bright moon body of the great emperors, but her talent in the martial Tao was also unparalleled. She was born with a heavenly fragrance and was easygoing and approachable. She was very popular in the entire Star Soul Palace and was the dream lover of many young talents. Even the arrogant disciples of Star Soul Palace were proud to be able to speak with Her Highness the Princess. There were very few people who could get this honor. Only Brother Xiao Chun, who guarded Her Highness the Princess all year round, could see the smile of Her Highness the Princess at all times. How could such a person who was regarded as a goddess by countless disciples of Star Soul Palace invite a man here? Shocked, the two of them could hardly think. "Junior sister Lan, you came so fast," Yang Kai replied. When he came to Star Moon Mountain earlier, he contacted Lan Sun, but the other party only told him to wait a little. He didn't expect her to come so soon. She actually called him Junior Sister Lan. The eyes of the two disciples of Star Soul Palace widened even more. Seeing Yang Kai and Lan Sun's extremely intimate appearance, their hearts inexplicably clenched, and they felt so much pain that they wished they were dead. The reaction of Her Highness the Princess made them feel that life was worse than death. Brother Yang sent a message, so little sister naturally hurried over. Lan Sun smiled and gestured with her hand. "Brother, please." Thank you. Yang Kai nodded and stepped into the air. When he arrived next to Lan Sun took a step forward and led the way. It wasn't until the figures of the two disappeared that the two disciples of Star Soul Palace looked at each other in a daze. When Lan Sun appeared earlier, she didn't say a word to them from beginning to end. She didn't even look at them. Instead, all her attention was on the outsider. What did this mean? This meant that Her Highness the Princess valued that person very much. Otherwise, the usually kind Her Highness the Princess wouldn't even give them a smile. Brother Xiao is in trouble. The junior brother, who had been silent all this time, said sadly. Yes, I don't know if Brother Xiao knows about this. If Brother Xiao knows. The Brother Xiao that the two of them were talking about was naturally Xiao Chen. Among the disciples of the same generation in Star Soul Palace, the one who had the most contact with Her Highness the Princess was undoubtedly Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen was fine in other aspects, but he was extremely narrow-minded when it came to Lan Sun. If any brother spoke to Her Highness the Princess, Xiao Chen would hold a grudge against them and find an opportunity to teach them a lesson. However, Her Highness the Princess only treated him like an elder brother and never had any romantic feelings for him. But now it seemed that the outsider had the intention of poaching Brother Xiao. If Xiao Chen knew about this, what would happen? Brother Xiao is one thing, but the key is Brother Lei. At the mention of Senior Brother Lei, a trace of fear suddenly appeared on the faces of the senior brother and junior brother, as if they had received a great shock. They hurriedly glanced left and right, and after confirming that there was no one around, they hurriedly fled. At the same time, in the Hall of Stars, the core hall of Star Soul Palace, a young man sitting cross-legged in meditation suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with stars, and they were blazing. When he looked up, his gaze, as sharp as an eagle's, seemed to be able to pierce through the ninth heaven and reach the sky. Suddenly, the young man frowned and said in surprise, 9 stars to the moon? How could it be 9 stars to the moon? This king's name is Bright Moon, and it's coming for me. This is an ominous sign, an ominous sign. Few people in the world knew that the great emperors of Bright Moon, whose name shook the star boundary and was like a guardian deity of the Southern Territory, actually looked like a young and inexperienced youth from the outside. As he spoke, he lowered his head again and formed an extremely strange seal with one hand. A strange aura spread out, while his other hand moved his 5 fingers, the tips of his fingers continuously pointing. After a short while, the young man pulled the corners of his mouth, loosened the seal, and muttered, Old man Tianji's secret technique is really nonsense. He can't calculate anything, yet he still has the nerve to claim to be able to discern heaven's secrets. When I see him, I will definitely pluck out his beard. After thinking for a while with his hand on his cheek, the young man said with flagging interest, Forget it. It's just a small disaster, not worth the trouble. After saying so, he closed his eyes again and adjusted his breathing. Brother Yang, stay here for now. On South Dipper Peak, Lan Sun said after arranging for Yang Kai's accommodation. Yang Kai asked, Junior sister Lan, when can I enter the 5-colored treasure pagoda? If he had not made an agreement with Hua Yilu, Yang Kai would not have been in a hurry. After all, this was the sect of the great emperors, so staying here for a while would not be a bad thing. Maybe he would even have some unexpected gains. However, with the agreement he was afraid of delaying. After all, even if he entered the 5-colored treasure pagoda, he would still have to cultivate for a month. It would take time to travel back and forth, so he could not delay for too long. Lan Sun smiled and said, Brother Yang, rest assured, since father has promised you, he will not go back on his word. It's just that the 5-colored treasure pagoda will not open for another half a year. But since we have made a promise to Brother Yang, my Star Soul Palace will need to make some preparations, so it should open in 5 days at the latest. That's good. Yang Kai breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. Lan Sun smiled and said, Looking at Brother Yang's eagerness, could it be that you have an appointment with a beautiful woman? She joked casually, but Yang Kai was startled and suddenly asked in surprise, Do you really have an appointment with a beautiful woman? Yang Kai's face darkened as he said, Don't talk nonsense, but there is indeed an agreement. Lan Sun smiled tenderly. Brother Yang doesn't need to explain. And, I'll go first. I'll inform you when the 5-colored treasure pagoda opens. Chapter 2792. South Dipper Peak was a secondary peak of Star Moon Mountain, where Star Soul Palace was located, but the cultivation environment there was extremely good. The world energy here was rich, not inferior to the main peak of High Heaven Palace. The place where Star Soul Palace was located was where hundreds of millions of cultivator-sourced qi gathered in the Southern Territory. Not only was it closely related to the Southern Territory, but it also suppressed the earth veins of the entire Southern Territory, so it was natural for it to have such abundant world energy. After arranging for Yang Kai's accommodation, Lan Sun left. For a time, South Dipper Peak was quiet, and Yang Kai's state of mind seemed to be affected a little, becoming extremely calm. Since no one disturbed him, he closed his eyes and meditated, cultivating the dragon transformation secret technique that Zhu Qing had taught him before she left. Time flew by, and soon it was night time. Yang Kai, who was cultivating, seemed to feel something and suddenly opened his eyes. His figure flickered, and he stood on South Dipper Peak. What he saw caused him to involuntarily open his mouth wide. The crescent moon hung high in the sky, and as far as the eye could see, there seemed to be a beautiful painting spread out in the sky above the Star Moon Mountain. Every star was emitting a dazzling light, as if they could touch it with their hands. What surprised Yang Kai the most was that among the stars, there was a brilliant light that connected the heavens and the earth. The brilliance of the stars seemed to contain a magical power, making the world energy of the entire Star Moon Mountain more lively. The heavens and earth were filled with a kind of charm that could not be experienced during the day. It was ethereal, but it was in accordance with the principles of the Great Tao. The entire Star Moon Mountain at this moment looked like a paradise, making people forget to return. Yang Kai stared at it in a daze, even forgetting to breathe, his mind unprecedentedly calm. This is the star tide, which occurs once a month. The great emperor said that the power of the star tide contains the great Tao of heaven and earth, and if one can learn a thing or two from it, they will benefit immensely. And, in fact, many disciples of my Star Soul Palace have gained a lot of benefits from the star tide. They have broken through the shackles of their cultivation, or gained inspiration to comprehend the divine technique. Especially for those disciples of my Star Soul Palace, who cultivate the Star Moon Divine Secret Art, the benefits are even greater. A person's voice suddenly sounded not far away. I see. Yang Kai was not surprised at all. He was immersed in this starlight, but he didn't know if it was because he wasn't a disciple of Star Soul Palace. But even though he felt that this star tide was quite mysterious and marvelous, he didn't get any benefits. After a short while, Yang Kai turned his head and looked at a sturdy young man with his hands behind his back. What's your name? The young man turned around and grinned, revealing a row of white teeth. Thunder. Yang Kai frowned and pondered for a moment. I have long heard of the 4 great emperors of Star Soul Palace. Among them, Great Elder Lei Hong is the strongest, far surpassing ordinary third-layer emperors. What is your relationship with Great Elder Lei? Lei Ting curled his lips as if he was not happy to hear Lei Hong's name, but he still answered truthfully. Uncle and nephew. Yang Kai said, Oh, so you're Elder Lei's nephew. Lei Ting's eyes turned cold. I prefer to hear you say that he's Thunderbolt's uncle. Yang Kai shrugged his shoulders and said, Sorry, I have only heard of Great Elder Lei's fame. Lei Ting immediately snorted coldly, light blue arcs of lightning swimming through his hair, crackling as he said in a deep voice, I am in seclusion in Star Soul Palace all year round, and rarely travel outside, so you naturally haven't heard of me. But it doesn't matter. You will often hear of my name from now on. Then Brother Lei. Yang Kai smiled slightly, not very interested in his boasting. Why are you visiting so late at night? Lei Ting's eyes drooped as a cold light bloomed from his eyes. I heard that when you came today, Her Highness the Princess personally came to greet you. That's right. Yang Kai nodded. Lei Ting's aura surged. Gritting his teeth, he said, So you and Her Highness are very close. Not really, we've only met a few times. Yang Kai rubbed his chin and said with a headache, I think I understand why Brother Lei is looking for me. It's good that you understand. Let's fight. If you lose, get out of Star Soul Palace immediately. You are not allowed to see Her Highness ever again. With a thunderous roar, the aura of a First Order Emperor Realm Master surged, as if the person standing in front of him was not the Yang Kai he had just met, but an enemy who had killed his father and stolen his wife. Yang Kai was stunned. You chose the wrong opponent, didn't you? Shouldn't your enemy be Xiaochen? He is the biggest obstacle between you and Her Highness the Princess. Lei Ting sneered. Xiaochen is nothing. If he dares to be disobedient, I will beat him until his father can't recognize him. Yang Kai was stunned. Xiao Chun was a rising star of the Southern Territory, and now he had even broken through to the Emperor realm. Lei Ting might seem stronger, but he was only a First-Order Emperor, so how could he dare to boast so shamelessly? However, Yang Kai had never heard of this Lei Ting before. He had always thought that this generation of Star Soul Palace was led by Xiao Chun and Lan Sun, but now it seemed that there was one more person. Thinking about what Lei Ting said before, Yang Kai quickly felt relieved. If he was in retreat in Star Soul Palace all year round, and did not go out, it was not strange that he was not famous. After pondering for a moment, Yang Kai said seriously, Brother Lei, I think you have some misunderstanding about me. Lei Ting's attitude of finding fault with him made Yang Kai a little unhappy. But no matter what, he was still a guest. If he really had a conflict with Lei Ting, he might offend the higher-ups of Star Soul Palace, especially since Lei Ting's uncle was Great Elder Lei Hong. It would be bad if his plan to cultivate in the five-colored treasure pagoda was ruined. Yang Kai was only halfway through his words when Lei Ting shouted in a low voice, Why are you talking nonsense? Hurry up and fight. As soon as his words fell, he raised his hand, and a dark purple bolt of lightning crackled, condensing into a lightning whip in his hand, before sweeping it towards Yang Kai with great force, seemingly capable of splitting the heavens and earth apart. The rest of Yang Kai's words were stuck in his throat as his expression turned cold. He's a little unreasonable. Brother Yang, the next time you see him, let me know immediately. I will deal with him. Yang Kai was silent for a moment, then nodded. Okay. Then Brother Yang, you continue, enjoying the breeze. This little sister will go back first. Lan Sun covered her mouth and giggled, then turned and left. Lei Ting. Yang Kai touched his chin, thought for a while, and suddenly showed a smile. Not far from the side of South Dipper Peak, Lei Ting grabbed Xiaochen's clothes and said fiercely, You did it, didn't you? It was definitely you. If you hadn't informed little sister Sun, how could she have come here so coincidentally? You bastard. Give me a little more time, and I will be able to drive that guy out of Star Soul Palace. Let go of me and talk, don't drag me around. Xiao Chun lowered his eyes and stared at Lei Ting's big hand with a disgusted expression. Chapter 2793. Lei Ting snorted, but he let go of his hand and said indifferently, I heard you fought with that guy before and didn't get the upper hand? Xiao Chun asked with a serious face. You also fought with him just now. Can't you see how strong he is? Lei Ting's expression turned serious. He thought seriously for a while and nodded. This person is a strong opponent. Xiao Chun said. What's even more hateful is that Sun Air seems to see this guy in a different light. So Lei Ting, let's put aside our differences for now and work together to drive this guy away from Sun Air. Lei Ting sneered. Work together? Do I need to work together with you? What a joke. Xiao Chun said. Do you dare to talk to Sun Air? Do you dare to look into her eyes? Lei Ting's aura suddenly disappeared. After a while, Bayan said indignantly, Who doesn't have a weakness? Xiao Chun sneered. You don't even have the courage to look at Sun Air and talk to her. If Sun Air is with him, how are you going to deal with him? Then what do you think I should do? Lei Ting was annoyed. Xiao Chun smiled and said confidently, The five-colored treasure pagoda will open in a few days. You and I will definitely go in. It will last for a month. Are you afraid we won't find an opportunity? Once we find an opportunity, we will give him an unforgettable lesson. At that time, he will have no face left. Work together to beat him up. Lei Ting was a little hesitant. That's not good, right? Bullying the weak with numbers is not something we do. Xiao Chen said, or you can fight him one-on-one. I will be in charge of restraining Sun Air and not let her disturb you. When Lei Ting heard this, he thought seriously for a while and nodded. Yes, that's good. He patted Xiao Chen's shoulder and said, then you will be in charge of Sister Sun. I will deal with that guy. So you agree to work with me? Xiao Chen revealed a hidden smile. Work together, work together. Since your junior brother has said so, as a brother, I naturally have to cooperate. Lei Ting laughed. He was in a very good mood. Xiao Chen said with a sullen face, I'm too lazy to argue with you about brother and junior brother matters. As long as I can accompany the princess, I will have a chance to get close to her. As for you, you idiot, just expel the enemy and don't worry about the rest. After the discussion, the two of them parted ways and went to conserve their energy. Ever since that night when Thunder came looking for trouble, no one came to Nanda Peak to cause trouble anymore. The entire Star Soul Palace seemed to be busy with the opening of the 5-colored treasure pagoda. And even Lan Sun didn't come to find Yang Kai. With a rare few days of leisure, Yang Kai cultivated in seclusion on the South Do Peak. He also consumed the 3 dragon blood pills refined by Jiying. The dragon blood pill was indeed amazing. After refining the 3 spirit pills, Xiao Chen was shocked. Yang Kai clearly felt that his physical fitness had improved a little. Although it wasn't much at his level, every bit of improvement was valuable. If he had more dragon blood pills, he might be able to raise his physical body to a higher level. Unfortunately, there were only 3 of them. As for the dragon blood pill that Jiying said had the effect of purifying the dragon race bloodline, Yang Kai didn't feel anything. After thinking about it, Yang Kai concluded that he wasn't a true dragon race descendant and had only obtained the golden divine dragon source. The effects of this pure dragon race bloodline naturally had nothing to do with him. 5 days later, Yang Kai had just finished refining the 3rd dragon blood pill. Feeling the improvement in his physical fitness, Yang Kai was still immersed in joy when he noticed someone flying in from outside. After a while, Lan Sun's voice reached his ears. Brother Yang. Yang Kai got up and walked out of the hall. Lan Sun said, today is the opening of the 5-colored treasure pagoda. Is Brother Yang ready? There's nothing to prepare. Then come with me, Lan Sun said and led the way. The 5-colored treasure pagoda was one of the most important cultivation grounds in Star Soul Palace. It could be said to be an extremely large sealed world, from the Origin King realm to the Emperor realm. A cultivator of all realms could experience it and obtain unimaginable benefits. It was rumored that the space sealed inside the 5-colored treasure pagoda was a broken world, so a cultivator could easily comprehend the world principles inside. Although the world principles were broken, they were much easier to comprehend and had miraculous effects on a cultivator's cultivation. The existence of the Divine Ascension Mirror allowed the soul of the entire Azure Sun Temple's masters to surpass that of a cultivator of the same realm. The existence of the 5-colored treasure pagoda also allowed a cultivator of Star Soul Palace to have a far greater comprehension of the world principles. The deeper one's comprehension of the world principles was, the purer the cultivation of a cultivator would be. It would also be easier for them to cultivate. It could be said that the 5-colored treasure pagoda was one of the foundations of Star Soul Palace. However, even Star Soul Palace couldn't open the 5-colored treasure pagoda casually. Every time it opened, it required a lot of manpower and resources. Not only did it require several great elders to work together, but Star Soul Palace also consumed countless precious treasures. Basically, Star Soul Palace would only open the 5-colored treasure pagoda once every 3 years to select disciples to enter. There was also a limit to the number of people who could enter. In order to obtain an opportunity to cultivate, the disciples of all realms in Star Soul Palace would often have to participate in a large-scale martial competition half a year in advance. Only after obtaining a certain ranking would they be qualified to enter the 5-colored treasure pagoda. This time, the opening of the 5-colored treasure pagoda was originally scheduled for half a year later. However, because of Yang Kai, it had to be brought forward. Of course, if Star Soul Palace had to open half a year later, Yang Kai would have had no choice but to wait. However, as the pillar of the Southern Territory, Star Soul Palace had always kept its word and would not do anything that would damage its reputation. The early opening of the 5-colored treasure pagoda this time caused the manpower and resources consumed by Star Soul Palace to increase exponentially. Yang Kai had entered the 5-colored treasure pagoda once before. When he arrived in Maplewood City at the beginning of the year, Xiao Yuyang had opened the entrance from afar and allowed all the Origin King Realm cultivator in Maplewood City to enter for experience. Yang Kai had obtained a lot of benefits and had a vivid memory of this magical sealed world. The reason why he chose to enter the 5-colored treasure pagoda for a month instead of asking the great emperors the 3 questions was because of his previous experience. The 5-colored treasure pagoda was filled with a large number of broken world principles, which were not only of great help to Yang Kai's cultivation, but also of great help to the sealed world bead. Although the sealed world bead was a small world of its own, the world principles it contained had never been complete. Yang Kai had obtained them for many years, but had never had a chance to repair them. Last time, inside the 5-colored treasure pagoda, the sealed world bead had absorbed a lot of these broken world principles, allowing the sealed world bead to become much more complete. Later in the Shattered Star Sea, the sealed world bead had absorbed a large number of broken world sources, allowing it to become more and more complete. If Yang Kai could absorb enough broken world principles from the 5-colored treasure pagoda this time, or even absorb complete world principles, the sealed world bead would most likely become completely perfect. A perfect sealed world bead would truly be a small world, no different from the star boundary. Perhaps it would bring about unexpected benefits. Compared to asking the great emperors the 3 questions, Yang Kai was more willing to let the sealed world bead have this opportunity. This would be of unimaginable significance to his future comprehension of the world principles and his aspiration to become one of the great emperors. Last time in Maplewood City, Xiao Yuyang had joined forces with several people from the Emperor Realm to open an entrance to the 5-colored treasure pagoda. Yang Kai had not seen the actual 5-colored treasure pagoda, but this time, he was fortunate enough to witness it. The 5-colored treasure pagoda was really a pagoda, towering into the clouds and exuding an extremely mysterious aura. When Lan Sun led Yang Kai to this place, he found that no less than 1,000 people had gathered around the 5-colored treasure pagoda. Among these 1,000 people, there were cultivators from the Origin returning realm to the Emperor realm, and no matter what their cultivation was, each of them had a calm aura. Obviously, they were all future pillars of Star Soul Palace. These 1,000 people were the disciples who would be entering the 5-colored treasure pagoda for life experience this time. When the two arrived, thousands of pairs of eyes stared at them. Every Star Soul Palace disciple, regardless of whether they were men or women, showed a look of infatuation. But when they turned to look at Yang Kai, their gazes were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred, creating a stark contrast. Yang Kai didn't care about the gazes of these 1,000 people, but there were a few other sharp gazes that forced him to treat them seriously. In front of the 5-colored treasure pagoda, 4 people stood side by side, their auras as deep as the sea, like 4 towering pillars. These 4 people were the current 4 great elders of Star Soul Palace. Xiao Yuyang and Shuezheng Mao, whom Yang Kai knew, were among them. The other 2 were old men, one with a ruddy face and a burly figure, while the other had white hair and was hale and hearty. Xiao Yuyang nodded lightly to Yang Kai, but Shuezheng Mao, who had suffered a loss at Yang Kai's hands, snorted lightly. "This boy is Yang Kai." The ruddy, burly old man looked at Yang Kai and asked. Xiao Yuyang said, "And he is Yang Kai. He is a dragon among men, but he is only a first-order Emperor Realm Master. How did he manage to hurt junior brother Shui?" The burly old man frowned. Shuezheng Mao's expression was a little unnatural as he said, "This boy is proficient in the space divine technique." Chapter 2794. Yang Kai and Lan Sun landed together, and Xiao Chun and Lei Ting immediately greeted them. Princess, Xiao Chen greeted with a smile. But Lei Ting, who had come with him, looked a little uneasy as he glanced around, as if he was extremely uncomfortable. Brother Xiao, Brother Lei. Lan Sun smiled and glanced at the two. Oh. Lei Ting hesitated as his face suddenly flushed red, not even daring to look directly into Lan Sun's eyes. A trace of surprise flashed across Yang Kai's eyes as he looked at Lei Ting, and then at Lan Sun, a playful grin appearing on his face. Brother Yang. Xiao Chen cupped his fists to Yang Kai, his demeanor amiable and easygoing, completely different from his previous overbearing demeanor. It was as if he had become a completely different person. Brother Xiao, Brother Lei, we meet again. Yang Kai returned the greeting. Lei Ting snorted softly and turned his head to the side. Yang Kai didn't mind and said, Are there only 4 of us from the Emperor realm entering the 5-colored treasure pagoda this time? Although there were many cultivators gathered here, it seemed that there were only 4 of them from the Emperor realm. Although the 4 third-order Emperor realm elders were also here, they definitely wouldn't enter. Lan Sun nodded and said, And there are only 4 of us. The Emperor realm cultivators from the Emperor realm have to pay a high price to enter the 5-colored treasure pagoda, and they will take up more spots, so there can't be too many people from the Emperor realm entering each time. Yang Kai nodded. Lan Sun continued, Brother Yang, although you have entered the 5-colored treasure pagoda once for life experience, the situation at that time is different from this time. The 5-colored treasure pagoda has a total of 5 floors, and each floor has many broken spaces. Some of these broken spaces are connected to each other and can be entered and exited from, while others are completely sealed. The higher the floor, the more obvious this situation becomes. The first floor is suitable for Origin Returning Realm Cultivator, the second for Origin Kings, the third for Dao Source Realm Cultivators, and the fourth for the Emperor Realm. The top 5th floor can only be entered by the strongest masters from the Emperor Realm. Only then can you enter. Is there some kind of seal? Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. Lan Sun nodded. And, if you're not strong enough, you can't enter the next layer. The higher the floor, the more dangerous it was. More than 10 years ago, when the 5-colored treasure pagoda opened, an ancient wood spirit appeared on the 2nd floor, killing many people in Maplewood City. Big Brother Yang personally experienced this matter, so it should still be fresh in your memory, right? Yang Kai said seriously, How can I not remember? The wood spirit disaster had caused thousands of deaths in Maplewood City. Yang Kai had experienced the whole process, and naturally remembered it clearly. Lan Sun sternly said, Although the experience inside the 5-colored treasure pagoda is of great help to a cultivator, it is also very dangerous. Every time the 5-colored treasure pagoda opens, some of my Star Soul Palace's disciples die inside. Can't guarantee their safety? Yang Kai frowned. Lan Sun said, There's no other way. It was said that the shattered spaces sealed within the 5-colored treasure pagoda were all ancient battlefields. Various worlds have been shattered. Although these worlds were shattered, they were still in the 5-colored treasure pagoda. Although these worlds are broken, many of the world principles still remain, allowing many ancient races, with tenacious vitality, to find a way to survive. Later, a powerful master collected these shattered worlds and refined them into the 5-colored treasure pagoda. The 5-colored treasure pagoda experienced many vicissitudes and passed through many hands before it was obtained by my father. However, even my father cannot fully control the countless shattered spaces inside. After a pause, Lan Sun smiled. Of course, even if he can control them, my father probably won't interfere. If there is no danger in this experience, what kind of experience is it? Yang Kai deeply agreed and nodded. Junior sister Lan is right. Lan Sun smiled. So when Big Brother Yang enters the 5-colored treasure pagoda, you must be careful. Don't be careless. I will remember. Yang Kai nodded seriously. At the same time, almost all the Star Soul Palace disciples participating in the 5-colored treasure pagoda experience had arrived. Great Elder Lei Hong lightly coughed, and the noisy crowd below instantly quieted down as thousands of pairs of eyes focused on him. The 5-colored treasure pagoda will open today. All of you are the elites of my divine palace, the future mainstays of the divine palace. This old master and the elders hope that you can gain something from the pagoda. Of course, the premise is that you must protect your own lives. As fellow sect members, you should help and support each other in the pagoda. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lan Sun quietly sent a message to Yang Kai, telling him about the 5-colored treasure pagoda. Yang Kai committed everything to memory. Lei Hong did not speak much, only saying a few words before waving his hand and saying, "If you remember, then get ready to go in." As soon as his words fell, he and the other 3 elders glanced at each other before moving to the 4 corners of the 5-colored treasure pagoda, urging their secret arts and forming hand seals. As their emperor chi surged, the 4 of them stretched out their hands and pointed downwards. With a rumble, the doors of the 5-colored treasure pagoda, which had been closed, suddenly opened. Although their movements were quick, the 4 great elders were sweating profusely at this moment. It was obvious that opening the pagoda was not a small burden for them. When the door opened, a slowly rotating pitch-black vortex appeared from within the door. It was like the huge mouth of a ferocious beast that was about to choose a person to devour. When the vortex first appeared, it was not very stable, constantly twisting and changing, sending out waves of energy fluctuations that made one's heart palpitate. But as the 4 great elders continued to pour in their strength, the vortex gradually stabilized, and the disturbing fluctuations gradually disappeared. This situation lasted for about an incense stick worth of time before the 4 great elders suddenly stopped, all of them pale and panting, their auras extremely weak. At this time, if a random second-order Emperor Realm Master appeared, they would not be their opponent. "If we don't go in now, then when?" Great Elder Lei Hong suddenly shouted. How could the Star Soul Palace disciples, who had been eager to try, hesitate? Their figures flickered, and one by one, they rushed into the vortex and disappeared. The modesty and courtesy of the disciples of great sects was reflected. Over 1,000 people moved out, and although each of them was as fast as the wind, there was no crowding or shoving, instead appearing extremely orderly. First, the Origin returning realm cultivators entered, followed by the Origin kings, and then the Tao Source realm. In less than 50 breaths of time, almost all of the thousands of people had left, leaving only Yang Kai and the other 3 from the Emperor realm. "Let's go," Lan Sun called out and took the lead to fly forward. Before rushing into the dark vortex, Lan Sun exhorted, "Brothers, take care of yourselves." "Your Highness, you too." Xiao Chen smiled faintly, showing a timely expression of concern. Sun, Lei Ting stammered, but before he could finish his words, Lan Sun had already disappeared, leaving him with a frustrated look. "I'll make a move first." As Xiao Chen laughed, he charged into the whirlpool. Lei Ting turned his head and glared at Yang Kai fiercely. "What are you doing?" Yang Kai glared back at him. "Don't let me meet you in there, or you'll die." Lei Ting coldly snorted. Yang Kai sneered and took the lead to rush into the vortex. His vision blurred, and he did not fall into a broken world as Yang Kai had imagined. The moment Yang Kai rushed into the 5-colored treasure pagoda, a strange power fluctuation suddenly blocked his figure, and he involuntarily mobilized his strongest strength to prepare for the unexpected. As the space principles fluctuated, Lei Ting felt as if he had hit a ball of cotton and was bounced back. What he saw next shocked Yang Kai. It was as if he was floating in a void. As far as the eye could see, there were balls of clouds and mist all around him. They were illusory. Moreover, these clouds and mist were of different colors. Some were colorful and pleasing to the eye, some were dim and lifeless, and there were even some that were pitch black, causing him to feel uncomfortable. Such existences were everywhere around Yang Kai. There were simply too many to count. What's going on? Yang Kai's head was a little dizzy. This was a little different from what Lan Sun had told him before. The 5-colored treasure pagoda was divided into 5 layers, each of which contained many broken spaces. Some of these spaces were connected to each other, while others were completely closed off. The cultivator who entered the 5-colored treasure pagoda would be automatically placed into a suitable layer and space according to their cultivation. For example, An origin-returning realm cultivator would directly enter a broken space in the first layer through the gate of the pagoda. Another example would be an origin king cultivator, who would enter a broken space in the second layer. A first-order emperor realm master, like Yang Kai, would definitely enter the fourth layer. There was no way to enter the fifth layer directly through the gate of the pagoda, so one had to find an entrance from the fourth layer. Yang Kai thought he would definitely appear in a broken space in the fourth layer, as Lan Sun had also said, but now it seemed that something was wrong. This was definitely not a broken space in the fourth layer, because Yang Kai could not feel any principal strength here. What were those clouds and mist of different colors? Releasing his divine sense to investigate, Yang Kai was both shocked and horrified, because he found that these clouds and mist were actually some kind of entrances to void corridors. After passing through these entrances, Yang Kai did not know where he would be sent to. Frowning, Yang Kai stood in place and thought for a while before suddenly waking up and looking behind him. What he saw was a huge dark vortex slowly rotating behind him. Isn't this the entrance to the five-colored treasure pagoda? How could it appear behind me? If behind me is the entrance, then in front of me is the way out. Am I in a buffer zone inside the five-colored treasure pagoda? Yang Kai's mind raced, and suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Could it be that these cloud-like entrances to the void corridors are? Turning his head and looking around, Yang Kai identified a cloud that exuded a dazzling golden light, and his figure flickered as he rushed in. His vision turned upside down, and the world spun as a strange principal strength lingered around him. By the time Yang Kai came back to his senses, he had appeared on a vast plain. In this plain, there was not a single blade of grass and gravel, looking extremely desolate. There was no sun, moon, or stars, but it was as bright as day. What a rich metal attribute aura! Yang Kai felt it for a moment, and a look of shock appeared on his face. The world energy here was a bit strange and extremely rich, but it only had one attribute, not natural attribute, but metal attribute. Chapter 2795. If a cultivator who cultivated a metal attribute secret art or secret technique were to come here, they would likely be overjoyed by such a cultivation environment. In such a place, the efficiency of cultivation would definitely increase by 10 or even 100 times. Is this the shattered space of the fourth layer? Yang Kai mused. Sure enough, it's a bit distorted. Lan Sun had said before that because the spaces inside the five-colored treasure pagoda were fragmented and incomplete, even the world principles were broken. In some spaces, the world principles had become extremely distorted over the years. There might be situations where one or more world principles were extremely strong, while the other world principles were weak, or even missing. This was the case in this fragmented space. The metal attribute world principles had almost dominated the world, leaving no place for other world principles. This distortion was really fierce. Yang Kai had chosen an entrance that exuded a golden light to enter this place. In other words, the color of the clouds and mist should represent the world principles inside the fragmented space. The clouds and mist were the entrances to the fragmented spaces. Through the clouds and mist that exuded different colors, one could enter a fragmented space. Why was this happening? Yang Kai was sure that the other Star Soul Palace disciples had not encountered such a thing, because if it had happened before, Lan Sun would have definitely mentioned it. Since Lan Sun did not mention this, Yang Kai's experience was unique. This was good news because in such a buffer zone, Yang Kai had the freedom to choose which fragmented space to enter, provided that Yang Kai could return to the buffer zone. Thinking so in his heart, Yang Kai immediately took action. The space principles fluctuated. Yang Kai stretched out his hand and tore the void in front of him. Unexpectedly, it went smoothly. He did not encounter much resistance. After thinking about it for a moment, Yang Kai was relieved. After all, this side of the world was fragmented, and the world principles were not complete. So how much interference could it bring to Yang Kai? A void crack appeared and Yang Kai's figure flickered and entered it. When he reappeared, he was back in the buffer zone just like last time. An inexplicable force came and bounced Yang Kai back. Instinctively urging his space principles, he immediately stabilized himself in the magical buffer zone, surrounded by clouds and mist. So that's how it is, Yongkai laughed. When he first entered this buffer zone, Yongkai did not know what was going on, but now that he had come here a second time with the purpose of probing, he finally understood. Space principles. According to Lan Sun, when a cultivator in the Emperor realm passed through the gate of the 5-colored treasure pagoda, they would be automatically thrown into a fragmented space in the 4th layer, which inevitably involved the world principles of the space principles. However, Yongkai was someone who was proficient in space principles, so under the influence of his principles, he was able to repel this attractive force, so the 5-colored treasure pagoda had no way of throwing him into any of the shattered spaces. He could only let him stay in the buffer zone. Now I can do whatever I want. After figuring out the whole story, he said, so I can't do anything I want now. When others entered the 5-colored treasure pagoda, they could only rely on luck. If they accidentally entered a death zone, they could only blame themselves for not checking the almanac before leaving the house. But for Yongkai, there were many things he could freely control. Once he had made up his mind, Kai Yang immediately began to look around. Naturally, there was no need to pay attention to the dark clouds and mist filled with death chi. Even if this was a fragmented world, it was still a world of its own. Amidst the thunder and lightning, bolts of lightning struck down from above. Yongkai was caught off guard and was immediately struck, twitching all over as he hurriedly circulated his emperor chi to resist. Only then did he feel a little better. Yongkai was secretly shocked. This was just a small sealed world that covered an area of only a few dozen acres, yet it was already so powerful. If it were a larger world, how strong would the repulsion and hostility be? Fortunately, Yongkai had chosen this fragmented small sealed world to experiment with at the beginning. Otherwise, if he had rashly tried to touch a larger world, he might have failed miserably. While secretly rejoicing in his heart, Yongkai clearly felt a strong repulsive force pressing down on him from all directions, as if it wanted to squeeze him out of this world and prevent him from doing whatever he wanted. However, this repulsive force was not strong, so Yongkai only needed to resist for a moment before remaining as steady as a mountain. Lightning flashed and thunder roared even more violently. Yongkai sat cross-legged with a look of indifference on his face, as the lightning continued to fall from above his head. It was as if he was a rogue who had broken into the home of an unarmed old farmer and was about to rob him of everything. World force. The corners of Yongkai's mouth curled up, revealing a smile. Instead of feeling frightened, he felt somewhat happy. A few years ago, in the Shattered Star Sea, Yongkai witnessed the shocking battle between the two great emperors, which allowed him to understand a kind of power called the world force. It was a power that was even more profound than principal strength, a power that only the great emperors could control. Wasn't this world force the world force? Although the world force of this side of the world was not strong, it was, after all, a legitimate seedling. Not only was it unable to harm Yongkai, but it also gave him an opportunity to come into contact with and comprehend this power in advance. Faintly, Yongkai gained some insights. However, good things did not last long. Only 3 hours later, the lightning and thunder suddenly disappeared, and even the hostility of the entire world was annihilated without a trace. This situation did not occur because the world had acknowledged him, but because the sealed world bead had swallowed up the world force of this side of the world. Even the remnants of the world force had disappeared, and this side of the world could no longer display any hostility or repulsion towards him. Yongkai opened his eyes and smacked his lips, a look of dissatisfaction on his face. It was at this moment that the world suddenly collapsed. Huge cracks appeared in the sky one after another, as if a mirror had been smashed by someone. The ground also trembled, and ravines suddenly appeared. Even the surrounding void also appeared, and the aura of chaos and nothingness emanated from it. Yongkai hurriedly got up, stretched out his hand, and tore space, escaping from this side of the world and returning to the buffer zone. Just as he returned to the buffer zone, a cloud in front of him suddenly burst apart, turning into dust and dissipating. This side of the broken world had disappeared just like that. Next, Yang Kai muttered to himself, his figure flickering as he swam through the clouds. It didn't take long for him to enter another shattered world. There were many broken worlds here, and although they varied in size, there were still traces of them upon careful observation. Yang Kai did not dare to touch those worlds that were too big, so he only looked for those small worlds to start with. Following the same pattern, in just 3 days, the sealed world bead had swallowed up the world force of more than a dozen small worlds, completely shattering them. Chapter 2796. Just as the 4 of them were trying to figure out the reason, the scene from before happened again. It had already happened more than a dozen times. For this to happen in the 4th layer, it was undoubtedly because the juniors from the Emperor realm had encountered something while they were in the 4th layer. Among these juniors, Yang Kai wasn't included, but Lan Sen, Xiao Chun, and Lei Ting were all descendants of Star Soul Palace's upper echelons, so no accident could happen to any of them. This matter was of great importance, so Great Elder Lei Hong didn't dare to delay it any longer, and could only send a message to the Great Emperors to report this matter, and ask the Great Emperors to decide how to deal with it. The Great Emperors still haven't given any instructions? Shuizheng Mao paced back and forth impatiently before suddenly pausing and asking Lei Hong. Although none of the disciples in the 4th layer were his descendants, as one of the 4 great elders of Star Soul Palace, his life was tied to Star Soul Palace, so he was very concerned about everything in Star Soul Palace. If not for this, he wouldn't have bullied the weak that day and dealt with Yang Kai. Lei Hong just shook his head when he suddenly saw a white light rushing over from the distance. Immediately startled, he reached out and caught it, but after sensing it, his expression suddenly became strange. What did the Great Emperor say? Xiao Yuyang asked in a deep voice. Lei Hong glanced at the other 3 elders and replied, "Wait and see. Wait and see, how could that be?" Shuizheng Mao muttered, not expecting the Great Emperor's instructions to be like this. Xiao Yuyang pondered for a moment before saying, "Since the Great Emperor said so, they naturally have their reasons. We can't interfere rashly." No one dared to disobey the Great Emperor's orders. Since the Great Emperors had clearly given instructions, no one dared to disobey. Everyone could only obey. Everyone secretly guessed. Those juniors might not be in any danger in the 4th layer, so the Great Emperors weren't worried. Half a month later, in a broken space, Yang Kai frowned. During this half a month, he had shuttled through various broken spaces and urged the sealed world bead to devour the world principles of these broken spaces, gaining a lot. Not to mention that he had some understanding of the power of the world. Just the number of laws of heaven and earth that the sealed world bead had absorbed was unimaginable. The shattered worlds were completely annihilated, and each annihilated world represented the laws of heaven and earth that the sealed world bead had completely devoured. And every time, Yang Kai would encounter rejection and hostility from those worlds. There were big and small worlds, and there were strong and weak enmity. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Lightning strikes were common occurrences. There were even some hidden ancient species in the broken worlds. Every one of them was powerful, and they were driven by the will of the world. These ancient remnant beasts came one after another to fight Yang Kai to the death, all for the sake of driving away the external enemy. No matter how well Yang Kai hid, he couldn't escape this fate. Fortunately, this was only the 4th level. Even if there were remnants of ancient remnant beasts, their strength would not be too terrifying. With Yang Kai's current cultivation, it would not be too difficult to deal with them. If it was the 5th level, which was the highest level, perhaps it wouldn't be the case. However, it was impossible to enter the 5th floor directly from the buffer zone. He could only find the entrance from some of the shattered spaces on the 4th floor. Over the past few days, Yang Kai had destroyed dozens of shattered spaces, and Yang Kai had killed countless ancient remnant beasts. However, Yang Kai had never found the entrance to the 5th floor. This was the first time he had encountered a world with a single elemental law, so he couldn't help but look forward to it. *Zheng. A clear cry suddenly sounded, like a sword being unsheathed. Yang Kai looked towards the source of the sound, and suddenly raised his brow. Not far away, a sharp blade exuding a golden radiance suddenly took shape and floated in the air. The long sword rotated slightly, its tip pointing towards where Yang Kai was. Golden sword. Yang Kai grinned. A bit interesting. Zheng zheng zheng. Clear sounds rang out one after another, interrupting Yang Kai's soliloquy. In the next moment, hundreds of golden swords suddenly appeared from all directions, each one seeming to have been carved from the same mold. Moreover, each of these golden swords exuded an extremely sharp aura, as if they could split mountains and sever seas. Gulp. Yang Kai could not help but gulp, his expression becoming a little difficult. With so many golden swords appearing at the same time, each one filled with a strong hostility, Yang Kai really could not be happy. Not only that, there were even more golden swords condensing. In the blink of an eye, Yang Kai seemed to be wrapped in a sea of golden swords in the sky and on the ground. Being in such an ocean, he was like a lonely boat, in danger of capsizing at any time. After the countless golden swords appeared, they did not immediately attack Yang Kai. Instead, they moved together and gave him a warning, gathering a shocking sword intent that seemed to want to shatter the sky and turn the universe upside down. Yang Kai was unmoved, but his expression was solemn as he waited. After 3 breaths, the golden swords began to tremble and quickly rotated at high speed, leaving behind a series of afterimages. It was as if they were being controlled by an invisible hand, breaking through the barriers of space and instantly bombarding Yang Kai. The myriad sword had already been summoned, and the supreme sword intent erupted. Yang Kai waved the long sword and defended himself like an impregnable fortress. But this defense only lasted for a breath before it was broken. With a series of clanging sounds and sparks flying, Yang Kai opened up and more golden swords came at him, as if they wanted to crush Yang Kai to pieces. Yang Kai was shocked. Although he did not underestimate the power of these golden swords, he still underestimated them. In a hurry, he hurriedly urged the 5 elements indestructible sword chi to surround himself. But it was broken in an instant. Chi 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 chi. With a series of soft sounds, Yang Kai was soon in rags and looked extremely embarrassed. There was even a bloody wound on his cheek, revealing his white bone and blood. It was an extremely terrifying sight. After a round of attacks, the golden swords calmed down a lot, and did not launch another attack. Heaven's way was to take away what was surplus, and make up for what was lacking. For the world will of this side, it would not be so extreme as to force Yang Kai to retreat. Yang Kai had experienced such a scene countless times, and was naturally familiar with it. Therefore, although he had suffered a slight setback, he had no intention of stopping, and instead urged the sealed world bead to devour the world principles here. The world was furious. The countless golden swords exuded an even more astonishing sword intent, and began to rotate more and more violently. With a soft sound, the golden swords attacked again. Yang Kai was already prepared and quickly shouted, "Dragon transformation!" The power of the golden divine dragon source suddenly appeared, and a huge golden dragon head flashed behind Yang Kai and entered his body. In the next moment, Yang Kai's figure soared in his body, which was already a little taller than an ordinary person, suddenly grew to more than 10 meters. Scales began to appear on his exposed skin, and a bulge appeared on both sides of his head, as if something was about to break out. His hands became dragon claws, and were incomparably sharp. A dragon tail appeared on his back, and the flying great ink dragon armor was draped over his body, giving him an awe-inspiring appearance. During this period, whenever he had free time, Yang Kai had been cultivating the true dragon transformation secret technique. With the help of the golden divine dragon source, this secret technique was twice as fast with half the effort. Today, Yang Kai's dragon transformation secret technique seemed to be even stronger than the last time. The last time he had dragon transformed in front of Hua Qingxi, Yang Kai remembered that he was only 6 meters tall. But now he was already 10 meters tall. If he continued to cultivate, he would likely grow even taller. If it were not for the Emperor artifact, the flying great ink dragon armor, Yang Kai would likely be naked again. The dragon transformation only lasted for an instant before the thousands of golden swords arrived in front of him. Stretching out his dragon claws, Yang Kai grabbed a dozen golden swords and exerted a little force. With a crack, these golden swords turned into fluorescent light and disappeared. Chapter 2797. 2 days later, a dragon's roar resounded throughout the 9 heavens. Yang Kai's eyes were wide open, and his body was covered in blood, as if he had experienced hundreds of life-and-death battles. His dragon transformation secret technique was still maintained, and except for the places covered by the flying great ink dragon armor, there were wounds everywhere. Hundreds and thousands of wounds of various sizes were extremely terrifying, and even a section of the dragon horn on his forehead was broken. Although his aura was weak, his fighting spirit was as hot as fire. In front of him, a giant golden blade more than 100 feet long stood in the void, facing him from a distance. The terrifying sword intent seemed to be able to cut space apart. For 2 days, Yang Kai had fought desperately with this metal-type world. He had used all his means and taken countless pills, and he had finally persevered until now. If it were not for his strong foundation and outstanding physical fitness, he would have been excluded or killed by this world long ago. It was really satisfying to be an enemy of the world. However, Yang Kai was already an arrow at the end of its flight, and correspondingly, this world was not much better. For 2 days, the sealed world bead had been devouring the world's world principles and world energy, wearing down the world's spirituality. If it were not for Yang Kai's huge consumption of energy, this situation alone would have been enough for him to conquer this world. However, it was almost time to end it now. Come, let's see who lives and who dies with the final blow. Yang Kai stared at the giant golden blade and laughed. As if responding to his provocation, the giant golden blade buzzed and chopped down at Yang Kai. This blow was the final blow of this world's power. This blow was also the final display of hostility from this world. Such a terrifying blow was enough to overturn rivers and seas. It was enough to shatter the void. A huge pitch-black mark appeared in the sky. It was like a wound that could not be healed. Yang Kai roared and did not retreat. Instead, he moved forward, swinging his dragon tail, and his body shot forward like a cannonball. A loud dragon's roar sounded, and the giant golden dragon's figure appeared, wrapping Yang Kai's body. The giant dragon's body was more than 100 feet long and lifelike. When it shook its head and tail, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Boom! A deafening sound rang out as violent energy ripples swept out in all directions. The space within a radius of 100 miles shattered inch by inch. 2 dazzling golden lights exploded in midair, so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. The whole world was filled with a golden ocean. Crack! At the same time, a crisp sound was heard. A huge crack appeared on the golden blade. Soon, with this crack as the origin, dense cracks covered the golden blade like a spider web. Crash! Like a broken mirror, the giant golden blade suddenly shattered and turned into specks of fluorescent light. It filled the world. Yang Kai left quickly. His return was also quick. His entire body was like a meteorite falling from the sky, crashing straight into the ground. Even the giant dragon projection covering his body suddenly shattered. Yang Kai fell heavily to the ground and bounced back up. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura was so weak that he looked like a lamp that had run out of oil. He lay motionless on the ground. Only the sealed world bead continued to devour the nomological laws and spiritual energy in this place. After a long time, Yang Kai let out a groan and moved slightly. He felt pain all over his body, as if all his bones were broken. Taking out spirit pills from his space ring and swallowing them, Yang Kai forced himself to sit cross-legged and silently operated his secret art. Half a day later, Yang Kai slowly got up, his face still pale. The previous battle had consumed too much of his strength, and he would need to rest for a while. However, he could not stay here any longer. He clearly felt that this world was showing signs of collapse, and the surrounding space had become unstable. Taking back the sealed world bead, Yang Kai took one last look at this side of the world before returning to the buffer zone. Another day later, Yang Kai rushed into a cloud of dazzling green light and entered a world with distorted wood attribute nomological laws. In this world, Yang Kai encountered an old acquaintance, the wood spirit. Not just one or two wood spirits, but tens of thousands of them. The vitality of the wood spirits was extremely strong, and their seeds had the ability to parasitize. Any wood spirit was in existence that was difficult to kill. Unfortunately, they had encountered Yang Kai. The wood spirits were most afraid of fire attribute secret arts and secret techniques. Although Yang Kai now cultivated the space divine technique, when he first entered the martial Tao, he had cultivated a fire attribute secret art, and his conflagrated knowledge C. The wood spirit could be said to have encountered its natural enemy. In this world, Yang Kai's situation was much better than in the world with distorted metal attribute nomological laws. Defending his position alone, and enveloped by his conflagrated knowledge C, the wood spirit could not approach him at all. After another 2 days, the sealed world bead had completely devoured the nomological laws of this world. Returning to the buffer zone, Yang Kai did not stop, unwilling to waste a single moment, as he purposefully searched for the nomological laws of the 5 elements. The monstrous waves of the water attribute world, the ocean cage, the earth stone mongoose of the earth attribute world, each of which had the power to destroy a country, were all cut down by Yang Kai's sword one by one. 25 days after entering the 5-colored treasure pagoda, in the fire attribute world, Yang Kai's expression was solemn as he swung his myriad sword, pouring all of his emperor chi into it to break through the ancient flame demon's body. Space principles fluctuated, and hidden in the sword light, the shattered space turned into a vortex, forming a dark black hole that sucked in the ancient flame demon's body one by one. The ancient flame demon let out a mournful howl, as if unwilling to accept such a fate, but it was still unable to escape the devouring of space, and eventually disappeared. Yang Kai let out a soft breath. The ancient flame demon he encountered in the fire attribute world was not as sharp as the one in the metal attribute world. Its defensive power was not as strong as the one in the earth attribute world. It was not as flexible as the one in the water attribute world, and it did not have as many wood spirits as the one in the wood attribute world. The most troublesome thing about this ancient flame demon was its almost immortal body. Although he wanted to teach Yang Kai a lesson, what was the point of fighting if his opponent did not fight back? What he needed was a real battle, a fair and square victory. Yang Kai said lightly, "Brother Lei's strength is profound, this one humbly admits defeat." The veins on Lei Ting's forehead throbbed. He felt like a volcano was brewing in his chest, as if it could erupt at any time. Yang Kai, however, turned a deaf ear to Lei Ting's words, glanced ahead a few times, then looked back and asked, "What is this place? Why is there a corridor?" It was not until this moment that he discovered that he was in a long corridor. The place where he appeared was a space array, and the end of the corridor was pitch black, like a beast with its mouth open. Lei Ting said in a muffled voice, "Between the 4th and 5th layers, after crossing this corridor, you will reach the 5th layer. As for what lies on the other side, it depends on your luck." Yang Kai rubbed his chin, thought for a moment, and muttered to himself, "It's a bit similar to the 4th layer." The 4th layer also had a buffer zone, but not everyone could enter it. Only he, who cultivated the space divine technique, was able to repel the suction force, so he could stay in the buffer zone. Chapter 2798. The corridor in front of him was a buffer zone for the 5th layer, and anyone could come in, provided that they could find the entrance to the 4th layer. No wonder Lei Ting had been waiting here. It turned out that he had already expected him to come to the 5th layer. "Brother Lei doesn't want to go in and take a look?" Yang Kai glanced at the dark entrance and asked. "There's no hurry," Lei Ting replied lightly. Yang Kai counted on his fingers. "If I remember correctly, this 5-colored treasure pagoda adventure will end in a few days, so if we don't seize the opportunity now, I'm afraid we won't have another chance." Lei Ting sneered. That's only for you. He was the nephew of Star Soul Palace's great elder, and one of the leaders of Star Soul Palace's younger generation. The 5-colored treasure pagoda opened once every 3 years, so as long as he wanted to, he could enter almost every time. Of course, he wasn't in a hurry to explore the 5th layer. On the contrary, Yang Kai had obtained this opportunity by chance, so if he didn't seize it, he might not have another chance to come to the 5-colored treasure pagoda in the future. That's true. Yang Kai rubbed his chin and smiled. In that case, I'll take my leave first. Where do you think you're going? Lei Ting roared. His aura firmly locked onto Yang Kai, as if he would teach him a lesson if he dared to move. Yang Kai frowned and said somewhat impatiently, Brother Lei, you and I have no grievances, so why be so aggressive? Lei Ting sneered. We do have no grievances, but you are a rare opponent, so I can't just let you go. Yang Kai thought for a moment before looking at him seriously and saying, Is this just an excuse? The biggest reason is Her Highness the Princess? Lei Ting blushed and waved his hand. What are you talking about? Don't talk nonsense. Yang Kai grinned. I can see that. Brother Lei cares for Her Highness the Princess and admires her. Brother Lei is afraid that my appearance will arouse Her Highness' interest. So you want to use force to show off your strength and make Her Highness look at you differently? Lei Ting wore an embarrassed expression. Is it that obvious? Yang Kai pointed at his eyes and said, I'm not blind. After being exposed by Yang Kai, Lei Ting seemed to be more at ease. He relaxed and said, You're right. Sun Er and I grew up together. I've never seen her treat any man so passionately before. You give off a very dangerous feeling, so I have to treat you seriously. A strange light flashed in Yang Kai's eyes. He smiled and said, That would be an honor. But Brother Lei, you're mistaken. He shook his head as he spoke. Lei Ting was startled. What's wrong? Yang Kai sternly said, Your Highness is indeed an outstanding beauty with an easygoing temperament. But with Your Highness's status and vision, how could you casually fall in love with a man? It was a matter between men and women. Not only do they have to be in love with each other, but they also have to be of equal social status. Lei Ting thought for a moment and nodded. Yes, you're right. Yang Kai continued. Brother Lei and Your Highness are childhood sweethearts. You should understand her temperament the best. Moreover, you and Great Elder Lei are uncle and nephew. Great Elder Lei is the Great Elder of the Divine Palace. Under the Great Emperors. With Brother Lei's status, you're barely worthy of Your Highness. Being of equal social status is naturally not a problem. As long as Brother Lei can capture the heart of Your Highness, you'll naturally achieve good things. Lei Ting laughed and said, I didn't expect you to be so interesting. His face suddenly turned cold. He suddenly changed the topic. Do you think I'm a fool? Do you think I'll believe you just because you said a few words? Yang Kai was stunned. He sighed and said, Brother Lei, oh Brother Lei, I just want to tell you, I'm not your enemy. Your enemy is someone else. Lei Ting snorted. Who? Yang Kai blinked and said, Who else could it be? Xiao Chen. Brother Lei, don't you know that the pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first? When you and I are confronting each other here, I'm afraid Brother Xiao is accompanying Her Highness the Princess. Moreover, Xiao Chen's cultivation and background are not below yours. I have seen Xiao Chen accompanying Her Highness the Princess several times, taking care of her every need. Men and women are different. After interacting with each other for a long time, love will naturally develop. Let me ask Brother Lei, are you afraid? Lei Ting sneered. Xiao Chen? With just him? Who does he think he is? Lei Ting can kill him casually. But you? Well, Sun Er's attitude towards you is very unsettling. While speaking, he clenched his fists, making crackling sounds. He approached Yang Kai with a grim smile. Don't worry, I won't take your life. At most, I'll cripple you. As long as I get rid of you, you won't have the face to appear in front of Sun Er. Then Sun Er will be mine. Oh. Yang Kai raised his eyebrows and asked seriously, Brother Lei, do you know that trouble comes from the mouth? Is it really okay to say such irresponsible words? Lei Ting curled his lips and said, There's no need to say anything more. Hurry up and fight. Oh, it turns out that to Brother Lei, I'm actually in your bag. A clear and melodious voice suddenly came from behind Lei Ting. Lei Ting's ferocious face instantly stiffened, and his hair stood on end. His fighting spirit seemed to have been drenched from head to toe by a basin of cold water. Swallowing hard, Lei Ting's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He mechanically turned his head and saw Lan Sun and Xiao Chen standing side by side on the space array. The former looked at him indifferently, while the latter had a look of ridicule and schadenfreude on his face. When? Lei Ting was horrified and felt his heart sink, as if he would fall into the depths of purgatory and never be able to turn over again. He kept wailing in the depths of his heart. It's over, it's completely over. Sun Er heard what I said. I'm afraid she won't give me any face in this life. What was most unbelievable to him was that he didn't notice when two people appeared behind him. If not, he wouldn't have been so embarrassed. It's Yang Kai. He's deliberately diverting my attention. That's right, he used the law of space just now. I thought he was on guard, but now it seems that he's not on guard at all. He's clearly interfering with my judgment. Lei Ting, how can you say that? Quickly apologized to Her Royal Highness. Xiao Chen was suddenly filled with righteous indignation and shouted angrily. Lei Ting's face instantly flushed red and he said helplessly, I. Lan Sun slightly raised her chin and stared at him, as if waiting for him to explain. Lei Ting couldn't say a word at all.